Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Mr. Bell.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, last time we met, our illustrious sheriff gave the prayer, and he just happened to be sitting back there looking like he wanted to do it again this morning. Thank you, Mr. Sheriff.
Let's go to prayer. Our Father, we come to you again and say thank you for this opportunity to come together to conduct the business of our county. We just pray, Lord, that you'll be with our commissioners this morning as they conduct the business and give them insight and wisdom. We pray a special prayer for Commissioner Gurley this morning, that you'll be with he and his family this morning, Father. And Father, we pray for our nation and our state, that our leaders in those capacities will also have insight and wisdom, and all things will be done that will be pleasing to you. We pray all things in thy Son's holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Stand.
Thank you.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Sheriff. And by the way, thank you for your words about Commissioner Gurley. He is still under the weather, but he is doing better, and he's in everybody's prayers. Thank you so much. Has everybody had the opportunity to read the minutes?
Move adoption.
All right, we've got a motion to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Just for the agenda, Mr. Honeycutt.
No, sir.
None at all, Zay.
None at all. Wow. Miracles will never cease.
All right, then we got a special presentation. Oh, I'm sorry. Need a motion to approve the agenda then. Motion on the floor. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Now we have a special presentation. Are you going to do that?
Yes, I do. One of the things I'm very happy and proud to introduce is Barry Gray as our new planning director. Barry is a native of Wayne County, but has served as the planning director in Johnson County, our neighbors, for the past, I believe, 11 years, 12 years. We are very lucky and I think very blessed to have somebody with Barry's background and experience and knowledge of Wayne County, but also planning, willing to come back home and willing to work for the county and for our citizens. So we're excited. I know Chip's excited. Chip's been in a dual role ever since January, and we've been waiting on Barry for the last 30 days, and we had a countdown calendar. So we're glad Barry's here, and we'll let Barry say a couple of words. So thank you, Barry.
Thank you. I had a countdown calendar as well, so. But it is good to be home. As Craig said, I am from Wayne County, grew up in the Paytown, Stony Creek area. Started out in Paytown until I was about 12, and then we moved to Stony Creek, closer to the big city. So, but I did go off to college at Appalachian State in Boone for 4 years, and then after school, came back to Eastern North Carolina, but never quite made it back to Wayne County. Was with the Mideast Commission in Little Washington for a few years, then went on to be a planner in Pitt County for a few years before I made it back closer to Johnston County as a planner for 4 years before becoming planning director. And so, as I said, it's good to be back home. Wayne County's always been home regardless of where I've been. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you, and I want to thank staff for this opportunity as well. So far, my first week has gone well. From what I can tell, Wayne County has welcomed me with open arms, and I do appreciate that. And it has been a very good transition so far. So again, my door is always open. If there's anything I can help you with or staff with, I'll be glad to do so. Just let me know. Thank you.
Welcome home.
Thank you.
Johnston County's lost our game.
And before he steps away from the podium, he talks about how quickly he's acclimating himself to Wayne County. I had to call upon him to help me with environmental flooding issue, I would guess we call it, down in Mount Olive, Mr. Merrill, since you took his picture. There's a consistent draining problem in Mount Olive when it rains, and young lady called me needing some help about a blue line ditch behind our house and some flooding. And thank you for pulling together some information for me, at least make me a little more knowledgeable about what's happening. And we'll talk about that some more. Thank
Yes,
you very
sir.
much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
welcome back to Wayne County. And just to go back in time a little bit, Barry's granddad used to be a county commissioner years and years ago. And if Barry can just stand up to Mr. Joe's reputation, we've got a good man.
Thank you.
Because your granddad he helped a lot of farmers in Wayne County in the position he had. But, you know, we're glad to have you back home.
Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Okay, it's 9:05, let's go ahead and move into public comments. Give you 4 minutes to come up and speak your piece, give us your name and your phone number, your address. And so it is, public comment is open.
Herman Crumpler, 919-273-6614. Property is at 288 Stony Creek Church Road. I have no idea why we were even up here about this, because this solar farm is wrong in so many ways. You've got drainage problems. I've lived around this for about 60 years, and there's no way that they're going to run the water out of there without damaging somebody else's property. My understanding is when they start a solar farm, they run the rows up and down hill. I've never seen them run crossways to keep water from running off. And it's going to create problems for not only the people living around it, but on Wayne Memorial Drive, you're going to have problems. There at Willow Creek, and it used to be called Ham Springs there at Wayne Country Day School. That's where that water's going to end up. And a solar farm is just going to expedite the speed that that water leaves this area, not to mention the real estate values. And this bit of property is right close to 795 and all these new roads we're building. And I know it probably doesn't perk, but with city sewer, this is just a garden spot here. And we're stagnating 2 nice developments, the one on Cottonwood and then the one on Stony Creek Church Road. And these people have worked hard for these houses, and it's going to especially damage a lot of them, because like I say, there's no way for that water to get gone without causing somebody some problems. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joey Lancaster. I'm at 454 Perkins Road, Goldsboro. And I want to first personally thank each and every one of you for, one, allowing me the time to come and speak to you, but also being our voice. I was affected by Hurricane Matthew, and a lot of us here have also been affected by Hurricane Matthew. And on their behalf, I want to personally thank each and every one of you for being our voice and fighting for us. And there's been a lot of people and individuals who haven't, but you have. I want to personally tell you how much I appreciate you. With that said, on Saturday, October 8th, 2016, our family of 5 and 2 dogs loaded up our car with 3 things each we couldn't live without and said goodbye to the only home that our children have ever known. In the last 19 months, we've gone from having our newly remodeled home that would be paid off in 12 years and now moving twice into 2 different rental homes, 2 different addresses changes, and 2 different school districts for our children. We've paid over $12,000 in rent payments, in addition to our monthly mortgage payment that we are still obligated to pay in order to keep our credit in good standing. With 3 children coming up that will need cars in college, soon having to start all over again with a new home mortgage, just walking away, as we were told, to most hurricane victims will have to do is just not an option for us. I've had to get additional jobs on the weekends to supplement our income in order to pay for the additional costs of rent, which is higher than our original mortgage payment, along with higher city utilities and many other extra expenses that popped up over the 19 months. Our children will never be able to get back over 600 hours that have been taken away from them while their daddy has had to work additional jobs just to make ends meet. We're giving a little under $10,000 from FEMA and $2,000 from our homeowners insurance to cover the cost of losing all of our belongings, home cleanup process, and many other costs. We're starting from scratch. According to the quotes from general contractors that I received to make our flooded home livable again, it would cost over $200,000. Our home that only appraised for $77,000 would cost us nearly triple to tear it down, elevate it, and rebuild it. And the SBA and FEMA reps couldn't understand what the issue was, why we couldn't do it. It would only have costed us $267,000 because we would still have to pay off the existing mortgage to live in the home that October 7th, 2016, the day before the hurricane, only costed us $67,000. That money did not even begin to touch what was already ahead of us. In addition to us still paying the mortgage on the unlivable home, our homeowners insurance company dropped us, which caused the mortgage company to add forced insurance to our mortgage, which would double the cost of normal insurance, which also means that the money that we were paying towards that mortgage is not even touching the principal. We have spent countless hours and have felt violated, embarrassed, and hopeless and on the phone and sitting in the government offices, filling out paperwork after paperwork, applying with federal and state organizations only to be denied or to find out that they have lost over 60 pages of our paperwork, or most recently the 2 hours of scanning paperwork brought in was not enough, and they mysteriously misplaced 3 documents that we had to give them again. We have felt anger. We've watched the news media show the state and federal government that have these relief funds, yet the local government can only tell us they don't have answers and don't know when we'll actually see them. We would like to know how the government officials have the antidote to cure this disease of pain and suffering from the long-term effect of Hurricane Matthew, and yet hold the tight not to help people. I'll leave you with this, with 30 seconds remaining. And now this question does not go towards you. I want you to forward this question, if you will, to those that are above you, those that are in the state, and those that are holding on to the funds that we need desperately. If this was your home, if this was your family, and you were affected and you had nowhere else to go, nowhere else to turn, what would you do differently? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here today with us and taking the time to listen to each one of us.
If you give us your name, your address.
Tyler Ham, 509 Forest Hill Drive, Goldsboro, North Carolina. And like the gentleman just said, I can't say it any better. I am going to throw out a couple dates. Me and my wife were affected by Hurricane Matthew as well. I would like to start by sharing some significant dates in our lives. October 13th, 2013, me and my wife had our first date, and then shortly she became my wife.
Starting route to Perkins Road Northwest.
June 24th, we sold our first home. June 25th, we got married of 2016. July 2016, we searched high and low for the perfect home to start our family. In August of 2016, we finally closed on our home that we thought was our happily ever after. October 3rd, 2016, we made our first mortgage payment together. October 8th of 2016, Hurricane Matthew hit our home. So that we were 4 months into our marriage, watching everything we worked so hard for being stolen from us, and there wasn't too much we could obviously do about it. We began taping up windows and doors, moving furniture in hopes to save as much as we could, building a wall of sandbags around our front porch to stop the rushing water from coming in. But it was pretty much all for nothing. Water was coming in from every direction. Around 3 p.m., we walked to our backyard. We were digging trenches and just standing there staring at the water coming at us. After what feels like hours of trying to find a safe route to my parents' home, it became a waiting game, waiting to see just how bad it really was. Around 6:30 p.m., we received a text message from our neighbors. It was a picture. It showed water surrounding our entire house, and it was enough that it covered 7 feet of our 8-foot shed. At the highest point in our home was 4 feet 2 inches. Needless to say, the next few weeks could be described as a blur, an array of emotions inside, all leading us down the path that we can only describe depression. I had never been so heartbroken, or we have never been so heartbroken and lost in all of our lives. What do we do? How do we move on? So I guess the question that the gentleman before me just asked is, if it was you, what would you do? And we just appreciate your time and all your efforts, and thank you all for being here. So, appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Darren Phillips. I live at 2783 NC Highway 581 North. Well, that was where I lived, I should say. During Hurricane Matthew, I lost my home. I lost a brand-new pickup truck that was 3 weeks old and my son's car. I received $1,300 from FEMA. That's all I ever got. We ended up living with a friend for 2 weeks until friends from out of state brought us a camper to live in. Let's see. While I was homeless for that week, I was told that I would lose my job if I did not show up to work the shelters because I work for the county. Luckily, somehow FEMA brought me a trailer. What they don't tell you is every month FEMA comes to your trailer to try to push you out of that trailer. Have you found a new house to buy? Oh, you can go stay in the Days Inn. You can stay in the Serena Inn. All the great places in Goldsboro that they tried to send you to. Let's see. I called the state emergency office, and they said they were going to charge us rent for the trailer for me to live on my own property. So I've never had any problem with credit. I'm retired military. I bought another house. Can I afford the other house? Sure. Do I have money to do anything with my life? No. I'm carrying 2 mortgage payments. In fact, my mortgage company raised my mortgage rate on my lost house by $200. I pay $1,100 on a house I cannot live in. I pay full flood insurance for a house they won't pay for if it floods again. I have full homeowner's insurance on a house I can't live in. I called them because I did the right thing. I had flood insurance. They had $97,000 in escrow that they refused to put towards my mortgage to lower my house payment. They told me I have to give them $50,000 to pay the house off. I'm putting a kid through college. It's just too much. Received a letter from Wayne County saying we'd be bought out in March. Since then, I've heard anything from the county. I've called Mr. Crumpler, but I think Mr. Crumpler may be gone now. He was the only one that ever told us anything. But now I didn't return calls, don't return emails, nothing. So am I frustrated? Yes. And then I watched Channel 14, Channel 14 News, and they had, I think it's Mr. Seabury or Sprayberry, the Director of Emergency Management for the state of North Carolina. And he was questioned, why hasn't anybody in North Carolina been paid off? Because every other state affected by Matthew has been paid. He says, it's a process. What process? They've got $94 million out of his mouth sitting at the state capitol. We have Roy Cooper on TV saying, don't worry, we're sending money to Houston because they got flooded. We're sending them aid. What about your own people, your own state? It's just disgraceful how they've treated us. I hired a lawyer. My lawyer, they gave him the runaround. He got so frustrated he couldn't do anything. And he's a great guy. But like he said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. If I don't pay my mortgage on that lost house, my credit's gone. Good. We need something. Somebody needs to help. Because it's just getting old. People saying, we know how you feel. We're working on it. Because they're not working on it. Mr. Seabury said right out, we're not doing anything. We're just holding on to $94 million. So if you can talk to him, please tell him to get off his butt and start paying us off because it's getting old. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
How are y'all today? My name is Renee Henson. I live at 129 Hood Drive, and I want to thank each and every one of y'all for taking a stand and listening. I want to thank Chip Crumpler. He's been a great asset to me. I've probably worried him to death. I especially want to thank Joe Gurley. He's been awesome. I want to thank Representative John Bell. He's really taken a great stand, and my sympathy goes to this gentleman that just spoke. We too live in a FEMA trailer, and they do everything they can to push you out. We're now being faced with having to pay $756 a month for rent. You know, you're faced with so many unforeseen decisions to be made, decisions that's going to affect you for the rest of your life. We had flood insurance, but by the time the flood insurance paid our mortgage off, we didn't have enough money left to start over with a new home. I am in touch with some representatives from David Rouser's office, from Senator Tom Tillis's office, and I got a newsletter from Senator Tom Tillis's office last week, and it said the state of North Carolina, with an additional $189 million, the state of North Carolina now has $1.4 billion in federal funds to go to North Carolina flood victims. So my question is, where is it at, and why aren't us flood victims able to get it? And I told John Bell that I'm ready to go to the governor's office and do whatever it's going to take to flood his office or whatever, because 19 months is ridiculous. I've got friends in Texas, I've got friends in South Carolina that were flooded, that's already got their homes together, and this is just crazy. And it's time for somebody to take a stand and take care of what's going on here in North Carolina. Thank you.
I agree. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Donna Burke, and I live in Whispering Woods subdivision, and I thank you for being here and listening to our concerns today. I almost feel silly standing up here asking you to hear me after hearing the disaster stories that these people have been telling, because my heart goes out to them. I'm asking you to help us avoid a disaster, and the disaster would be the solar farm that's going to adjoin our subdivision. I didn't really prepare any remarks. I just came to ask you to please postpone making a decision. Many of us in my subdivision did not even know that this was proposed. About 10 days ago, I got a letter in the mail. I understand there was a hearing before, but we didn't know about it. My neighbors didn't know about it. I don't know if it was publicized in the paper, but this is something I wish we had known about months ago. Most of us have taken our whole life savings and made up the biggest investment of our lives in our forever homes. And this morning I went out and I took a picture across the field, across my yard into the field where the solar farm will be. And it's just a beautiful, peaceful setting. My garden is right there. I look out across, and on the other side of the field, I can see another neighborhood that will be impacted. I understand that there are possible health concerns. I understand that there's possible water runoff problems. I understand that aesthetics are just going to be terrible. I understand that with construction of a 63-acre facility there, it's going to be noise and chaos for a year or two. I understand that our property values are going to decrease by 30 to 40%, and the worst part of that is those of us who live where we're going to wake up seeing this solar farm, this monstrosity of a solar farm. Those of us who adjoin that property, we won't even be able to sell our property. And we're the hard-working, tax-paying people of Wayne County, and we count on you guys to protect us. The other people who have spoken, they didn't have protection from the weather. But you guys can protect us from this monstrous endeavor. I don't know if you were planning to vote on it today or not. If you are, I would ask you to postpone that and at least come out and see the area that's in question, see it firsthand. You have what I've been told is there's a 65-foot setback. That's no distance at all from the backyards where children play and where we have vegetable gardens. I've heard that Greene County has a 300-foot setback. And I've heard that other counties limit solar farms to 15 acres maximum. But a 63-acre solar farm is just massive. And we have so many potential farms in Wayne County that are wide open with no subdivisions nearby. And this one will have a subdivision on both sides. So I'm concerned about a lot of the issues other people have talked about. And I was concerned enough to talk to my neighbors. And most of them couldn't be here because they're at work. And some of them have small children without babysitters. So I carried a petition around, and I have 30 signatures asking you to please stop considering this property for a solar farm and see if there's another alternative somewhere that will not impact people. I have 30 signatures. I was only able to go to half of my neighborhood. I haven't been to the whole neighborhood. No, only one person did not want to sign, and that was because they said they wanted more information. So everyone I've spoken to is very against it, and I haven't had a chance to go to the neighborhood on the other side of the field. But it's not just me standing here, and I can leave this with you if you like it. But please at least postpone the decision until you can come out and actually see for yourself what's impacted.
Thank you.
Do I look?
I was just going to let everybody know, you were actually a little bit early, but we're getting ready to do that next, the public hearing for the solar farm. But your point's well made, okay? Is there anyone else who wants to speak in the public comments section? And again, we're going to be doing a public hearing in just a minute. We finish this for the solar farm that's talked about.
Morning. My name is Sarah Collins. I live off of Hood Drive near Grantham, and in 2016 we lost our home. I have a simple question. We had a man from the state come out this last week to see how the progress is going on the reconstruction of our home. We are currently in our home. We're very fortunate. I feel bad for the other people that aren't, and I'm trying to help any way that I can to get them back in their homes. But when the state man came out, he said, do we have any concerns? And I said, yes. In January 2017, FEMA gave us two options, to accept the buyout or to elevate our home. We opted to elevate, and they told us to go ahead and start rebuilding. Chip Crumpler was also there telling us, encouraging us to rebuild because they can elevate afterwards. We started rebuilding in February, March of 2017, and in August of 2017, we were more than halfway finished with completing our home, and we got a letter from FEMA saying there was no money in the budget to elevate and they would not be elevating our home. So we're now back in this home, scared to death every time there's a rainstorm that it's going to flood again. So when this state man came out and we told him of this situation, he told us that it's possible that the county could have made a choice where they allotted money towards the buyout or elevation, or just the buyout and no elevation. And so my question is, are we stuck? Did Wayne County just opt to not have any money go towards elevation? And so all these families that were put back in their homes promising to get elevated and then being told that they're not going to be elevated, is that a possibility that the county just never allotted money for elevation and we were manipulated into moving back into our homes? Thank you.
Thank you. County Manager, I think you're in today, you're going to make some comments about where we are and all this.
We do have an update on where we're at. We've had a couple of meetings recently with Mike Sprayberry, and so the state is wanting to move this.
Why don't you go ahead and do that now, because I think a lot of people are here for that.
Well-
Because I know they probably have other things they need to do today.
And honestly, and we understand our citizens' concerns. It is very heartbreaking to what we hear, and we understand the frustration. This is a state program, and Wayne County we're kind of the conduit of it. We have been really, the state's been focused on intake, and they've had over 200 applications received at our intake center. But now what their concern is, and which is our concern as well, is getting the money out to the people who need the money. And we've had meetings in April and also last week with Secretary Sprayberry. They are committed to spend the dollars. They're committed to begin starting the housing activities and public facility improvements. They've not given us a time frame. But they are committed. While a specific time frame has not been established for the housing activities, emergency management is moving forward with two activities simultaneously. And one is one that doesn't require a lot of environmental work or procurement requirements under our housing repair reimbursement. And the other is for eligible houses eligible for reimbursement, and after houses are inspected to confirm the owner's repair work was completed, the county will be able to write reimbursement checks to the owners. So the state understands that money has not flowed. They understand that it's been sitting on in Raleigh, and that the final plan has not been approved by FEMA. They are hearing the frustrations, but there is a fire that has been lit under the state to make sure that the funds are flowing back to our community. So, Chip, do you want to?
I would just urge anybody that had damage from Hurricane Matthew recovery that was not accepted into the Hazard Mitigation Grant buyout program.
Come on.
I would just urge that everybody that was not accepted into the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program buyout, apply, dial 211, make appointment to go to our housing intake center, take the time to sit down with those recovery specialists, fill out the paperwork. I know it's a long process, but it's going to have to be something that has to be done. There'll be additional help there through that process for urgent needs. Again, on the hazard mitigation buyout program, this county is still awaiting a grant agreement from the North Carolina Emergency Management Agency, which was the grant recipient from FEMA. So on that, when we get a grant agreement and we sign it, the board signs it, we're ready with staff, ready to move, ready for the administration, ready to hire the lawyers, the real estate appraisers to move forward with this process. Nobody can be more frustrated with this than me. But I can guarantee you, I can do my best to call everybody, but when you have this many people calling you, I can't call everybody back every day. I've spoken to people every day, all day long. So I try to do my best to contact you back. But you just have to hang in there, and hopefully we'll know something shortly on the buyouts. On the CDBG-DR, which is housing reimbursements for repair, it's rehab of houses that have not been repaired. There's several housing programs there. If you haven't applied and you had damage to your home due to Hurricane Matthew, I urge you to go apply. It is a 24-page application process. There are lots of documents that you have to provide, but that is the avenue to that money. And so there's lots of applications that have been turned in. There's some in different various stages of completion, and we have a full staff over there working with the state of North Carolina to get this accomplished. So those are. It could possibly include elevation. It could possibly include additional buyouts. It is typically for low to moderate incomes. but the state is allowing urgent needs category. They haven't defined the urgent needs category, but I think it's going to apply to people that are not low to moderate income. So it doesn't matter what your income, I'm urging you to go down and apply and go through that process.
Chair, can I just say one thing? When I went and filled out, because we were kind of told not to, but we turned in all of our receipts of money spent trying to get back on our feet. So, I would recommend anybody go apply, because the gentleman told me, he said, one thing for sure, if you don't, you won't. He said, go apply, so.
That's right.
When you applied for the buyout and you haven't heard anything from that department?
If you were sent a notice, or you were one of the 84 properties that were accepted into the first round of buyouts, you're still in there. You're still in the queue. We're still awaiting a grant agreement. When we receive that grant agreement, we've already got the staff hired to run this program. Once it gets in our hands, it won't take long.
But are you talking about the 84 or are you talking
The
about
84.
additional?
The 84.
Okay, now, when you go to, my understanding is it's HUD where you go and take your receipts and things. I was told it could take as long as 3 years.
It could be, now that's down at the, that's through CDBG, that's a longer process, yes ma'am. The 84 properties are hazard mitigation grant program. There's two programs. One's funded by FEMA, one's funded by HUD.
Right.
The HUD
But
program
in
is
3
a bigger
years, I would
process.
have gone through bankruptcy.
I understand. And my heart is out for you. I understand there's worse cases than that. I've lived it. But that's, unfortunately, that's the hand that I'm dealt.
Okay, if you manage to somehow get through this process, and then in 3 years your name comes up, will they still help you pay back that money that, will they give you back the money that you have paid?
On your
dealing with the
mortgage?
hurricane?
You have to, the specifics of the grant, I can't, of how it's applied, I can't answer that, because I'm not a CDBG administrator. Those are very difficult laws involved with CDBG and HUD. We have a specialist that actually handles that, David Harris, who is running that intake center. Those are things that I cannot answer because I've never dealt with community redevelopment.
David Harris?
He is our consultant. He is our CDBG consultant and has been since the early 80s.
He's over on George Street.
Yes.
So then this letter is the 86, right? There's nothing after that?
That's the buyout.
Or is there something
Yeah,
after
this is, what was your address?
509 Forest Hill.
Okay, yes, that's your husband.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah, you're in that 84. And hopefully, the state will come up and make appropriations for additional buyouts beyond that 84, but I can't speak to that. I can't make promises for the state. I can only do what they dictate to us. But it would be my hopes, because we had a total of 331 applications that were turned in for buyout. They gave us money to fund 84 properties. Now, obviously, everybody's needs can't be met. There is a priority ranking that they set, and that we went by those priority rankings, whereby elevations was a lower priority than actual acquisition, so.
Chip, thank you for the explanation. Mr. Mayor had something he wanted to comment on.
I just have a comment. I don't have a question for you, Chip. Thank you. I guess you could say that some of the people that spoke today, that I'm responsible for giving them the right to, that there's their right to come and talk to us. But I felt like that we needed to hear from the street level of people, what people are going through. And the key here is that we have heard testimony this morning and instances where people have spent their life savings waiting 19 months for help to come on FEMA. And I have been involved in the 84 properties along with Chip. And all of these have already been, all the paperwork's been done. There's case numbers for every single one. And
between Chip and I, myself, and the county commissioners we've been to, our legislature I've been to Senator Tillis's office straight. We're not able to get an answer. Here's the bottom line, and I, as a commissioner, this really hurts, and as a citizen, this really hurts the fact that 18 months is way too long, and now I am headed back the other way. Anyone that has been in this situation for 6 months, up to 6 months, past 6 months, I am also making a suggestion there should be some reparations somewhere along the way, because I know for a fact two of these citizens that are involved in this, in these 84 properties, Chip, are on the edge of bankruptcy. They spent their life savings. This is unacceptable to me as an elected official and as a citizen. And I want to go on record, because a lot of these people, believe it or not, District 1, up in the northern part of the county, who would have thought? You don't have any flooding problems up there. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. We had some issues up in District 1, on Perkins Road and up in that area. So the bottom line is that how can we as commissioners, how can we really drive this home to our government? And I understand that the hang-up is in Raleigh. I understand that. But my goodness, have we got to go on a bus? Somebody suggested, have we got to go flood the governor's office? Well, somebody, yeah. But my bottom line is that I want to thank y'all for coming. We do, as commissioners, we have your back. We're doing everything we can to try to get this. And I really thank Chip Crumper. He's our assistant county manager now, but he's, and we have a new planning director. But Chip has been on top of this, so it's been very helpful. So,
how about we have another meeting in 30 days and you tell us what you accomplished?
Well, I guess.
Now y'all come back to us, we come to you, 30 days to find out what you accomplished.
Well,
I mean, in 30 days, you can't get anything done in 30 days, but ain't made it in 18 months. We're gonna give you another 30 days.
But I just want to thank all of y'all for coming and showing, because citizens do, in numbers, citizens do help us as elected officials to listen. Citizens still rule in the end. Yes, sir,
And
Craig.
I'll like to say, and I want to again thank Chip for the work that Chip's done. I've worked in a bunch of different counties, and I've never seen somebody as on top of a program from day one as Chip Crumpler and his staff was. So I do want to thank Chip, and I do want to thank this board. The problem really is not with Wayne County.
That's right.
The problem is, if we had the money, if we had the funds, if we had the ability, checks would be given out.
Yes.
We are hamstrung by the state of North Carolina in their funding process. So we could come back in 30 days, unless the state of North Carolina says, we're allowing you to go ahead and spend this money, we'll be at the same situation that we're at.
Yeah.
However, as I said before, I do believe, and this is a thank to Representative Bell as well. I think he is very much pushing this issue at the state level. I think Secretary Sprayberry has felt a lot of pressure, knowing that there, not only Wayne County, there are other counties across the state as well that are having very similar issues. So they're feeling that heat from across the state, and I do believe you will see some action, and I do believe you'll see a lessening of some of the restrictions, so we can more quickly get money back into the hands of our citizens who desperately need it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
It does look bad on us as commissioners for the frustration that all of y'all are going through, and but we certainly hope that y'all understand we're the low man on the totem pole. We're at the bottom. We can't, and we have worked on this. We've been to Raleigh. We've talked to Senator Pate, to Representative Bell, Representative Dixon. We've talked to David Rouser. We have been working on this, but we're getting nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. And you know, and we're what y'all come to expect help. And and it looks like we're not doing anything, but we have been working on it, but like I say, we're at the bottom of the totem pole, and I can't say that we're as frustrated as y'all are, because I had no flooding. I can't say what y'all are going through, but we have honestly tried to get something done, but we've run up against the same wall that y'all are. Thank you.
I had a number of people that did call me, and I told them to definitely come up here today and express their opinions. I think a stronger voice will drive it home that you guys need help. And I just find it unbelievable. We're almost 2 years out, and you guys ain't getting anything. Amen. And I'm just like him. I'm frustrated. We're all frustrated. But let's keep speaking with a strong and loud voice so that somebody will finally listen. And I lay it right at the governor's doorstep. I really do. That's just my opinion as one person. But I do need to close the public comment section. We need to move on to our Board of Adjustment meeting. So we will be talking about the solar farm. A little bit later, we will be talking about the updated county flood damage prevention ordinance, which really didn't have anything to do with the Matthew issue we're discussing right now. But you're certainly welcome all to stay and listen up. So having said that, I'm closing the public comment section, and we need to recess the Board of Commissioners and convene the Wayne County Board of Adjustment meeting. Get started. Good.
So we're going to do the Board of Adjustment, and each of you must be sworn in all at once, and anybody that plans to speak will need to be sworn in at the same time. Is that correct, Board? That is correct. All right. So do you just stand there? And anyone in the audience that plans to speak at this Board of Adjustment public hearing? All right. Do they have to raise their right hand? Raise your right hand. And do you swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
We can leave it. Okay.
Mr. Clapper, you're back up, sir.
Who is this gentleman? Okay, case for the Board of Adjustments is Strata Solar LLC for Cookstown Solar LLC solar farm site. The property owners are Nancy Pilkington Mills and Morris B. Payton wife. The developer, Strata Solar. This is located in the Stony Creek Township off of Stony Creek Church Road. The planning board on March 13, 2018 approved a site plan for Cookstown Solar LLC facilities located at 274 Stony Creek Church Road. The site plan was reviewed by the staff and has been determined to meet the minimum requirements of the Wayne County Ordinance regulating the operation and maintenance of solar energy facilities. The proposed solar farm is a 5-megawatt facility located on 37 acres across 2 parcels of land. Solar plant will be interconnected to the local distribution system owned by Duke Progress Energy. The 37-acre site is currently agricultural. It is located on the south side of Stony Creek Church Road, 4,700 feet east of its intersection with North US 117 Highway. Property is zoned RA20. Solar energy facilities are permitted as a special use in the RA20 district under our zoning ordinance in Section 50. The site is also located inside the airspace control surface area for Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. The review comments from the base were attached to your minutes. The site is bordered by residential and agricultural uses. The site plan meets the requirements as outlined in the Wayne County Ordinance regulating solar energy farms, facilities regarding setbacks, fencing, landscaping, and buffers. The property is within the following service district areas. It's located within the Belfast Fire Department for fire, serviced by EMS Station 6. There is no water supply watershed present. There are no voluntary ag districts present, no wetlands. It is within Board of Commissioners District 1. The Wayne County ordinance regulating the operation and management of solar energy facilities in Section 5, subsection B, requires that any facility shall be considered a special use in all areas of the county covered by the Seymour Johnson Air Force Base Airspace Control Surfaces, as delineated in the 2011 Air Installation Compatible Use Zone Report, the ACUS report, or any subsequent reports. Approval as a special use must be from the Wayne County Board of Adjustments. Section 54 of the zoning ordinance, subsection 54, when issuing a special use permit, the Board of Adjustments must consider that permission may be granted for the establishment of special uses as shown in the district regulations if the Board of Adjustments finds from the evidence produced after a study of the complete records that A, the proposed use does not affect adversely the general plans for physical development of the county and will not be contrary to the purposes stated in these regulations. Item B, the proposed use will not adversely affect health and safety of the county residents and will not be detrimental to the use or development of adjacent properties or other neighborhood uses. C, the proposed use will not be affected adversely by existing uses and will be placed on a lot of sufficient size to satisfy the space requirements of said uses. D, the proposed use will not constitute a nuisance or hazard because of the number of persons who will use such a facility, the vehicular movement, or the noise or fume generation. And number E, the proposed use shall be subject to the minimum dimensional requirements of the district in which it is to be located and shall conform to the off-street parking and loading regulations. Additional requirements. A, the Board of Adjustments may issue a special use permit of its findings if its findings are favorable. As an additional safeguard, the board may impose or receive as conditions such additional restrictions and standards as may be necessary to protect the health and safety of the community and to protect the value and use of the property in the general neighborhood. And we're here today to determine whether the Board of Adjustments should issue this special use permit. The recommendation from the supporting documents to recommend issuing a special use permit was an approved site plan that was attached to your minutes. Development, I'm going to just read through these and then we'll scan to them in the page in your minutes. Approved site plan, completed development and special use permit application with the approved fees. The interconnection request to the electrical provider was submitted, a decommissioning plan for when the solar farm is closed. The owner's authorization authorizing Strata Solar to act on behalf of the property owners in applying for permits. Input from Seymour Johnson Air Force Base Engineering with favorable recommendations of approval. The developer also supplied a buffer cross-section or detailed sections for their buffer, and they submitted a detailed reasons for approval, and they also had a real estate impact study that they submitted from a certified real estate appraiser. If you'll turn to page 8 in your agenda packages, you'll see the layout of the site. You'll see, can we bring that up on the overhead? Yeah, that's good right there. You'll see the layout. I'll go back one to the one without the imagery. It's back one page. Oh, you only have this one, okay. Well, you'll see the site there. The access out is a 60-foot easement to Stony Creek Church Road. That's required in the ordinance. We only require 30. That is their sole access. The entire site is fenced. It has buffers between all residential properties. You have a setback of the 100 feet from any residential structure to the development, plus the requirement of it to be fenced, and then a setback inside the fence line of any improved structures, meaning the solar panels or any electrical components of an additional 25 feet. So they have pretty much, they have a lot of buffer on both sides of this solar farm. Page 8 is one without the photography that's not on the screen, and then page 9 is one with the aerial imagery. And I will point out here, this is the Cottonwood subdivision here. It's on the bottom right of this screen. And then you have some residential development up here on Stony Creek Church Road, and then there's a little subdivision that comes in here. Solar farm starts right here. There's a buffer area here. This is these Cottonwood property lines. You see the fence line. There is an opaque fence that's going to be put up there so that they won't be able to visually see that solar farm from their residential neighborhood. And that's wood. Moving on to page 10 is their completed petition for a special use permit. Page 11 is their interconnection request to Duke Energy Progress LLC for interconnection.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Can I interrupt and
Yes.
ask a question at any time?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me go back to this that's just been handed to us. And you were talking about the buffer that's in there. What height are these trees going to be, or shrubbery going to be, at the point that we are in fact starting the project? In other words, it's one thing to go in there and plant trees this high.
Right. It has to attain a height of 6 feet within 2 growing seasons.
6 feet within 2 growing seasons?
Yes. Now, the developer may be,
We can address that.
Yeah.
But I'm Tom Terrell, attorney for Strata. We can start out with many of these being 6 feet in height. It's hard to control it 100% when you order them from a nursery, because some may come at 5, some may come at 7, if you've ever been trying to do that. But that's not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
and you could make that an additional request of approval that they use a larger tree. That could be part of an additional restriction you you requested as part of your, approving their site plan if you deem so necessary. And then, going back, you got any other questions on that? Okay.
Thank you.
On 22, the developers submitted from Kirkland Appraisals, a study of other solar farms and their impacts on adjacent residential structures. This is from a licensed appraiser. You have that in your agenda package. We will go to the last page of it. Give me a second. Of course, this is from a licensed real estate appraiser. Page 59, they give you a conclusion that shows no impact in home values. 59.
Mr. Crumpler, was that an appraiser from here in Wayne County?
No, sir.
Where did they come from?
Raleigh.
Raleigh. It is a licensed North Carolina real estate appraiser, though, and his credentials are in your agenda package attached to his report. Moving on. On page 65 of your agenda package is his owner's authorization granting the developer the rights to apply for permits for this project. 66 is the same thing from the second owner. And then page 67 is the decommissioning plan that we require as part of our ordinance. You'll see that on 67, 68, 69, and 70. And then the developer has, on page 71, detailed reasons for application approval. I'll let them probably go over that with you. That is submitted as part of the evidence as an exhibit. Page 74 is their supplemental regulations that they're going to meet. I'll let them go over that with you. And then, more importantly, on page 76 is the recommendations from Seymour Johnson Air Force Base Engineering, saying that there are no conflicts with the height or visual, light emissions, bird or wildlife aircraft, strike hazard, or any radio frequency electromagnet interferences. There's no noise due to the air that will hinder aircraft operations, and there's no impact on any of their clear zones. So that is a favorable recommendation from Seymour Johnson. And that is the supporting evidence.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
One other question. Is it one of the reasons that we are having this hearing as such is that this property does in fact impact the air base, Seymour Johnson? Or
It
it's
is
within
located,
that-
there's two reasons why it's before you. It's in a RA20 residential agricultural zone, which permits solar farms SA special use. And number two, it is within the aircraft control surface area, airspace control surface area for Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. Both of those require the case to be issued to the Board of Adjustments for permitting.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks for the clarification.
And that's all. We'll let anybody else who'd like to speak.
You want to come on up first and speak for the solar company?
Thank you, Chairman
What was your name
Pate.
again, sir?
I'm sorry?
What was your name again?
My name is Tom Terrell. I'm an
Okay.
attorney representing Strata Solar, and I'm pleased to be here this morning to present the materials that you see in a notebook that we have just handed out. To some extent, this is really the application that has been tabbed so that you can find your way through it more easily. I have with me this morning Mr. Brent Neiman. Mr. Neiman is an engineer who has designed more solar farms than any engineer in the country, probably by some high magnitude. Also, Mr. Kirkland, who has become known as the national expert for appraising and doing market impact studies on solar farms throughout the United States with all of his studies. Also here with me are the property owners, the Pates and the Mills, who are here this morning. I'd like to tell you and start off with something. It's a very true story. It's very short. A little over 25 years ago, I was a young attorney, and there was this thing called the personal computer, and everybody was saying law firms needed to learn how to be computer literate, and they needed to learn how to use email and do research and invest in these things. And there was an article, I still have it somewhere, from a statewide lawyer publication that called these computers passing fads. I am here to insist and tell you that clean, safe, renewable energy is no passing fad. And Wayne County has recognized that, and it has very appropriately adopted a solid, well-written solar ordinance to govern the development and the standards and the placement of these facilities. I think that the materials that we submit this morning will show that we have fully complied. If you would, I just want to very briefly show you what our evidence is. It's all in this notebook, but if you'll turn to the tab that is called the SUP standards. First, in the first section, we do point out that under North Carolina law, once you allow a use in a zoning district, you have made the finding that it's a harmonious use. And it's that point that the burden shifts to others to demonstrate why in this particular location it would not be. Saying it's ugly is not one of the factors that our appellate courts have allowed. In fact, there are 3 cases or more on that very specifically. Under item B, whether it would affect the health and safety of anybody in the community, we don't know the exact number. We've actually tried to figure out, but there are well over 300 plus solar farms that have been approved in North Carolina. 80 or 90% of those have been approved by special or conditional use permits with that precise standards. And communities all over this state have made the finding that these solar farms do not harm health or safety for the obvious reasons that they don't generate traffic. They have maybe 2 traffic trips a month to come in and mow the grass. And they don't have toxic materials. They don't create drainage issues. They are safe in every respect for health. There's no disease or bacteria. And there is no evidence from any solar farm anywhere based on the materials that it is a health issue. And this is not new technology. We've had this technology for over 50 years. We have at least 3 Court of Appeals cases. I know there's one pending and coming through where when there was a denial mentioning these things, the Court of Appeals actually overturned the local decision. They're also safe because they are nothing but glass panels with some electric components inside that capture the heat from the sun, and they send that to what's called an inverter, and that inverter converts it to electricity that it can put out onto the grid. They're completely dark at night, and you can't hear them. If you're standing outside the facility, you're going to hear the traffic on the roadways, the birds in the trees, and the wind going past you before you're going to hear anything. If you get really close to the inverters inside, it sounds a little bit like a humming refrigerator, but that's it. Outside, you cannot hear anything. We were standing outside earlier. I understand somebody made a point about drainage issues. In fact, to build this, and I'll ask Mr. Neiman if he will address it, but to build this, they have to follow every single local and state regulation on sedimentation and erosion control, and all of those are designed not to have any sedimentation or drainage problems. But the bottom line is, they don't increase runoff. DEQ, or what used to be DENR, says that these are not creating impervious surfaces. On the second page of that tab, I just point out that there are no fumes or odors. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. And then the rest of this goes through the decommissioning plan, the maintenance. We're glad to answer any questions that you have. But if you would, turn to the tab on buffer, and maybe it would be easier to look at the handout that we have brought right here. This is the buffer. This is a computer simulated design that they do in-house, but it shows, Mr. Crawford, could we put that site plan back up so I can point something out, or Ms. Bowden, could we put the site plan back up on the screen?
I actually have both of them now. Then we get this one.
Yeah, the one that Chip was pointing to, that might be, if I could. This, on the west side, on the western side of the site is where we have planned the 25-foot wide planting area. That's not the extent of the buffer. The extent of the buffer is much broader than that, but that would be approximately a 25-foot right there. We've heard just as late as last week that there's some citizens who live down here along Cottonwood Road who may want additional buffer, and we're glad to work with you. And we would make this your choice. As it is right now, there is, as Mr. Crawford pointed out, an opaque fence. The closest place from a home, which will be about right here to a panel, is 145 feet. But we would also be glad to put in some buffer there. This is something that at some point becomes a community preference. Strata does this routinely, and it's not an issue for Strata. And then the final point is that the site plan is attached to the back if you had any questions about that. I'd like to, at this point, to ask Mr. Brent Neiman to come up. Mr. Neiman has designed more solar facilities than any engineer in the country. I'd like for him to address the drainage issue and show you, for just in a couple of minutes, a little bit more about the design.
Good morning. My name is Brent Neiman. I'm a Director of Civil Engineering at Strata Solar. I've been at Strata going on about 6 years now, and I've worked on every project we've built. We own and operate approximately 150 sites of this size in North Carolina currently.
I can't hear.
I'm sorry.
Can you speak up?
Sure, I sure can. Tom kind of walked you through the site plan. I'll just give some brief overviews. We are leaving existing vegetation on western side, northern side, and on the northeastern side as well. That vegetation is preserved to provide that buffering. As Tom described, the planted buffer is located on the western side where there is no existing screening. Along the eastern side, adjacent to the neighborhood, currently it shows a 6-foot opaque fence. The ordinance gives you the option of landscape buffering or 6-foot opaque fence. We don't really have a preference. If the preference would be to plant the same buffer there, we would be amenable to that versus the opaque fence. There is adequate space to accommodate that there. We actually have about 100, I think it's 151 feet as identified based on survey data from the existing property line to the proposed closest racking there on the house that's dimensioned. That would be right in this area here. Do you have the non-aerial version of this that you could slot in? You can see the racks specifically a little bit better. So this is a tracker system. I don't know if you guys are familiar with tracker system. We built several sites in and around Goldsboro and Wayne County, and those have been fixed tilt systems. They face due south all the time at a 20 or 25 degree tilt. This is a tracker system. The racks face north-south, and they track the sun from east to west throughout the day. They're electronic motor that's virtually silent. If you're watching it, you can't actually see it move because it creeps so slow. Advanced technology allows you to produce about 30% more energy than a standard fixed tilt system with the same system size. So this is the dimension that I was going to point out here. There's a residence here that's very close to the existing property line. They also have some planters and some other vegetation, some trees. That's obviously part of the home site. It's actually encroaching the property line. That will all remain. The solar facility does not have any effect on any of those existing improvements. So this distance from the property line to this rack is 150 feet. And what you'll see here is a difference in rack length to accommodate additional spacing there. If you scroll down a little bit towards the south, you'll see here's the next point we've identified. The ordinance is 50-foot minimum from property line to the nearest improved area is what it describes. We've provided about 80 feet right there. So that's pretty much a walkthrough on the site plan. We do have the entrance on the west side that comes from a flag piece of the property that touches the right-of-way. That's where the interconnection will be with the utility as well. We do have a hatched area you'll see on the other side of an existing drainage swale there. That's a staging area, construction staging area. It's temporary. We utilize logging mats during construction. It allows us to receive material, keep material out of moisture and mud, and then when we're done, we can pick the mats up and establish vegetated area there, just like the rest of the solar farm. On average, solar farm introduces about less than 2% impervious over the entire site as an increase from pre-development to post-development. That's mainly due to the posts themselves are counted, which is about actually 2.5 square inches per post if you look at the cross-sectional area of that, as well as the equipment pads where the energy conversion happens from DC to AC to allow the interconnection to the utility. We will also have to receive an NCDOT driveway permit for our driveway installation. There's an existing driveway. We're changing the use, so we have to attain a driveway permit, pretty standard. Typically, that's a paved driveway at the end of construction through the right-of-way. We also have to meet NCDEQ standards for soil erosion and sediment control. This site is also in the Moose Buffer. On this particular site, we did delineate more of the property. Along the southern piece, there is a jurisdictional stream outside of the project limits that's buffered. Nothing in the project is a jurisdictional feature by the Corps or the state, so no buffers inside the site. As part of the DEQ approval process, we will have to meet all of the soil erosion and sediment control standards as well as the stormwater standards.
Can I interrupt there?
Sure.
So if I'm understanding you, I mean, you do this every day. We're just average folks. We don't know about all these acronyms and so forth, but.
Sorry.
Let me paraphrase what you said, and correct me if I'm wrong. And that is that in order to proceed with this, you are going to have to get a permit from the State Office of...
It's the Department of Environmental Quality in the Land Quality section.
Whereby you must prove to them that it will not increase the runoff.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so you're saying that this will not increase runoff?
Yeah, a 2% increase in impervious is a negligible change in runoff. In fact, this is an ag site, so an ag site, by definition, drainage is measured, you associate what's called a curve number to the improvements, so a forest has a curve number of 30, right?
But you will not be able to operate this unless you get a permit.
That's correct.
From the state office of...
Yes, sir. So...
What's the state office again?
Department of Environmental Quality.
Environmental Quality.
Yes.
And they control...
Yes, sir.
The development of properties to ensure that there is not additional runoff.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir. They have ordinances, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can I finish the one thought about the curve number, just to make a point to you?
Curve numbers,
Yes.
okay, go ahead.
So a curve number of an ag field is higher, which produces more runoff than the curve number of a grassed lawn. So what we'll be producing here is a grass lawn. So the state considers it, and engineering profession considers this less runoff because the grass is retarding it much more than raw dirt of an ag field.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
But this permit probably doesn't address any existing issues that's already there. Like, for instance, let's say we've got some issues in other subdivisions around this area already. This permitting process is not going to take into consideration problems that already exist in drainage of water and where it's going to end up at. It only applies to how you get it off of this piece of property. Is that correct?
Correct. We're not allowed to exacerbate the situation, so we can't increase any runoff.
Right.
And we would, in fact, if you do the curve number analysis that I described, the runoff is in fact less from this site than in the previous condition.
My point is this, though, that there's a problem already exists there on water runoff now. It already exists. So the key is that can take place to keep other subdivisions, and even downstream, we have issues now in that area. I've gotten phone calls, and of course, I'm just pointing out that you are responsible for the area that you're going to develop. We need to figure out a way that we can look, say, hey, what's going to affect down at Stoner Creek Church or down Stoner Creek itself? Because we have issues now, is what I'm saying.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I got maybe two questions. After you get the permit from the state, what is the follow-up data, a sequence of follow-ups that will ensure that this water runoff, whatever it was rated at when you got the permit and got the facility in place, what is the timeline that there would be a mandatory check to make sure that it was still the same? And I think maybe an additional question, my understanding, was this, I understand the owners are here, was this regular farmland? Was this regular farmland?
Yes, this is ag, yes.
And so, I heard Mr. Mayo say that there was problem with runoff now. Have you checked, I'm talking to the engineer here, have you checked to see what that number is right now?
So, yeah, as we move through the permitting process and we prepare the calculations and plans to submit to DEQ, we will evaluate the stormwater as it exists on the site today, and then we will do the calculation of what is it in the proposed condition, and we have to prove that ours is no worse than existing or better.
Well, but from a preliminary standpoint, without having had those sophisticated measurements done, and I'm sorry, this is maybe a question to you and the property owners, is there any particular problem with the runoff on this property now that you know of, or that
So what I would
satisfy this question?
Yeah, so what I would suggest is the issue is really what you're talking about is a drainage basin study that is much bigger than a single property. So the burden doesn't lie within an individual property owner to improve the entire drainage basin. The burden is to handle your site improvements. So if there's an existing problem, this would be a drainage basin study.
Let me assist. I'll just ask you just one question. Is it your testimony that when you put grass on it, as you will, that by these curb numbers, it actually reduces the amount of runoff because it's no longer an agricultural land?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So just by putting grass on it, it's what I'm saying is...
It's supposed to be an improvement.
An improvement. It reduces the runoff just by converting agricultural tilled land to grass.
Agriculture is one of the primary sediment producers in the country, just by nature of it being raw dirt in cyclical fashion. So it's a well-known fact that is the case.
I have a question.
And one more to answer your question, you asked about inspections. So during the process, we're required by the state rules to inspect the site after every rain event that's a quarter inch or larger, or 7 days, whichever is more frequent. And we keep logs of those, of the measures that are installed per the plan. We have to remediate those measures within 48 hours, and we keep logs of everything that happens during site construction. At the end of site construction, the measures remain in place until sufficient ground cover is provided to allow for the removal of the temporary measures to protect all of the waterways.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question before, to the gentleman that's sitting down. How many other facilities have you put in Wayne County, or have you in Wayne County?
That would be...
I don't have the exact figure, but I think it's 3 or 4.
Okay.
But that's just strata.
That's just strata. I can't speak to the other. There's a website that has all of the constructive facilities.
And I know
on
that's
that.
probably a better question for Mr. Crumpler, but I think maybe it would be helpful for this audience to know how many of these has been put in around the county. And not exactly, Mr. Crumpler, because I know
There's approximately, there's over 30.
I know there's 5 or 6 around Mount Olive, so.
All of those are not in our jurisdiction. Some of them are in Mount Olive's jurisdiction. Some of them are in the city of Goldsboro jurisdiction, the town of Olive jurisdiction. There's probably over 30 in some phase of development. With approved site.
And without you being able to testify exactly, they probably use some of the data to develop their regulations and so forth that's in the countywide regulations. I mean, all these facilities have been put together and ruled and judged and followed up basically on the same pattern, I would hope.
I would think so for Mount Olive. I can't speak for Mount Olive, but I know ours, all but the first ones that were developed fall under our ordinance, and we have a pretty restricted ordinance. It's been, before this board, we worked with NC State University to develop the ordinance to begin with, and then we've modified it once since then to add additional restrictions for Signal Johnson and our municipal air force as well.
Thank you, sir.
And my question was, which comes first, the permit, the DEQ permit, or our vote?
Your vote.
So you wouldn't pursue the permit without our vote?
We are in the process of, we started the civil plans about 2 weeks ago. It takes us about a month to get ready for submittal.
I mean, is that something that you could do before, or?
You could. There are jurisdictions that require those permits prior to this meeting.
Not that I doubt what you were trying to say, but I'd
Right.
really like to see that permit.
We can't.
That's just me.
Yeah, so we can't physically, you can't disturb more than an acre of land without that permit. We've been doing this a long time, so I won't let that happen.
So if we approve this, or if it's approved, we're approving everything except the stormwater runoff. Is that what we're doing?
We won't have any control over that anyway, because that'll be a state permit.
I understand, but it would be nice to see what it's going to be, so we do have questions. In other words, we've done this in the past. but
State erosion control plans will be required before the issuance of a building permit. So they'll have to show proof that they have that plan in place.
Okay.
The local stormwater regulations, because of the amount of impervious surface is so low, it's exempt from local stormwater requirements. So their erosion control with the state would be required prior to the issuance of a building permit, just like their DOT driveway permit would be required as well.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Crumpler's there. We're going to move on to another issue here.
Okay.
To your knowledge, have there been any solar farms built near subdivisions in Wayne County?
Near residential development, yes.
Near residential development?
Yes.
And we've been dealing with solar farms for the last, 4 or 5 years?
At least.
To your knowledge, have there been any complaints in regards to resale of residential properties near or adjacent to solar farm?
After development, no. Not to me directly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I saw a lot of hands come up earlier, so I know there's some other people who'd like to speak, so if you'll come on up.
We have another couple of people.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Let
Didn't
me
realize you had a whole team here.
introduce Rich Kirkland. I said earlier that Mr. Kirkland's become the national expert in this. But I want to, before you start, with respect to the drainage, there is no ground disturbance. Essentially, all you do is just drive a pole into the ground and the frames attached to the poles. It's just you stick them and you drive them in hydraulically. Rich, come up here. Commissioner Cromartie, to your question about where Mr. Kirkland's from, yes, he is from Raleigh. He is not from Wayne County. We admit that. We can't change that fact.
That wasn't an insult to Raleigh.
Now, I can insult Raleigh, forgive me.
But sometimes, for the sake of the audience here, I wanted them to be comfortable with that the person was as familiar with Wayne County as they could be without having lived here.
And that's a very fair question. I will make 2 points on that. I think when you look at the data in his study, he is looking at communities throughout eastern North Carolina that very much, they may not be precisely like Wayne County, but they're very close to it's a good North Carolina eastern community. The second point is that Mr. Kirkland has compiled thousands of hours, I'm going to say thousands, I know how many we've done, of data to get to where he can draw these conclusions. So having a local appraiser to do it, it would take them months and months to come up with this and visit all these facilities. But Rich, if you would, walk them through what you have, and it's in the tab that's in your notebook.
Good morning. Again, my name's Rich Kirkland, state certified appraiser in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Oregon, Florida, and a couple others. I'm located out of Raleigh, North Carolina, as has been said. I'm also an MAI through the Appraisal Institute. I've been appraising in North Carolina for over 20 years. I regularly appraise agricultural properties, including row crops, timber, poultry farms, things of that nature, sweet potato curing barns, as well as looking at subdivision development land and other commercial properties. I believe the last property in Wayne County that I appraised was a poultry farm down towards Mount Olive. Again, I've been asked to look at the impact analysis. I've been doing impact analysis on solar farms for the last 7-8 years. In that time, I've looked at right at 400 different solar farm projects, and again, in that process, I've been quantifying what uses are around solar farms. Again, every time I look at any solar farm, I'm looking at every parcel around it, looking at what uses are there, and measuring how close houses are to these solar projects. If I look at the adjoining properties, based on the number of acres adjoining solar farms, the most common adjoining use is agricultural. If I look at the adjoining parcels, just by number of parcels, the most common adjoining use is residential. They're really being located in those areas where the fields meet homes, because you have to have the open space for the solar project, but you also have to have nearby power infrastructure to pull it out and nearby users to use that power. This is a very typical location for a solar farm project, not just across eastern North Carolina. I've broken things down in the state looking at coastal plains, Piedmont mountains. It's the same basically layout. You see over 90% of the adjoining uses are agricultural, residential, regardless of where in the state I look, and actually, honestly, regardless where I look in the country. So again, this is a harmonious location for a solar farm and very consistent. I've also looked more specifically at those ratios of those adjoining uses, looking in Wayne County as well as the adjoining counties. I looked at 51 different solar farms just around here. I counted them when you were asking. I've looked at 11 different solar farms in Wayne County. And again, they're showing very similar breakdowns between agricultural residential uses. The other thing, and probably the main thing I'm doing while I'm looking at these adjoining uses, I'm looking for sales. So I can do what's called a paired sales analysis or a matched pair analysis. It's where you look at a home or, in some cases, agricultural properties next to a solar farm, compare it to a nearby home or fields that is similar but not next to a solar farm, so you can measure to see if there was an impact. In the report, I've included 13 different solar farms, projects that I've looked at, and from those I've pulled 26 different matched pairs. I would point you to page 6 of my report, specifically because I looked at a project. The very first one is a project solar farm here in Goldsboro. This is the AM Best Solar Farm that adjoins the Spring Gardens subdivision, and got multiple matched pairs that I've pulled from that. I've looked at homes that were sold to homeowners before the solar farm project was announced or built, and compared those to nearby home sales that were not next to the solar farm. Found no impact on value. After the solar farm project was built, actually the subdivision started building bigger and more expensive homes. The homes that were built after the solar farm project, the ones that adjoined the solar farm, sold for the same price as the exact same floor plan that was not next to the solar farm. So there was no impact there. Talked with the builder team, asked them about timing and the sellout of everything. They said that they still sold out the entire subdivision in the same time frame they had originally planned on, so it didn't really impact how quickly they sold homes. Since then, there's been a resale in there. So in 2013, a home was purchased from the builder by a homeowner, and then they sold it again in 2016, and it showed typical appreciation just at 3% for the time period that they had per year. So again, the three main ways you would look at value, when you look at initial price, you look at appreciation, you look at timing of sale, that one solar farm project shows all of those dimensions and none of them being impacted by that adjacent solar farm project. I've looked at a number of others. There's about 12 others in there. I think the next closest solar farm project would be in Bailey, North Carolina. And again, I've looked at a lot sale and a home sale in a more rural location, not in a subdivision, but just out in the rural side. Again, showed no impact. I talked with the builder out there. They bought the lot. They didn't consider the solar farm to be a negative. They then built a home and sold it and had no impact on property value. Again, I'm happy to go through all the other projects that I've looked at, but those are the two I thought I would point out. One of the things I'm looking at also when I'm looking at adjoining homes is I'm measuring the distances between panel to home, because that kind of captures sort of proximity, but also the view. When I look at this project, the closest home I measured was 145 feet from the closest point on a panel to the closest point on a home. I measure those distances, actually specifically for some of the reasons here. There's a home that's built very close to the property line, close to the fields, and so when you measure that way, it's better than measuring to the property line because it more accurately captures the presence to the home. So again, that's very consistent with what I'm seeing across the state and everywhere else. If you look at, let's see, in my report on page 34, you can see the breakdown of the projects, solar farm projects in Wayne County and adjoining counties. The closest home I found in these projects was 50 feet from home to panel. The average, or excuse me, median distance for that closest home on these projects was about 215 feet. When I look across the state, and I've got about 334 solar farms I looked at on that, and you can see that on page 33, you can see there that, again, the closest home to panel was 25 feet. The average distance for the was about 200 feet. So at the subject property sitting at 145 feet, it's very well in keeping with what I've seen across the state. And the average distance at the subject property, just for all the different homes, is about 450 feet is the average distance to adjoining homes. So it's further than what I've seen on those. The various match pairs that I looked at, the distance I've measured, the closest home to panel measured there was 150 feet. So again, very consistent with what I'm seeing here. So it is my professional opinion that this project here is very consistent with the data I've looked at, and that there would be no impact on those adjoining residential property values. I can go into more detail or answer any questions.
Questions? One question.
Yes, sir.
From all of this detailed work that you have here, and specifically on the AM Best Solar Farm, which is here in Goldsboro,
Yes, sir.
you have determined, based upon interviews and your testimony, that there's been no impact at all in regards to having homes built adjoining the solar farm.
That is correct.
And if I'm correct in saying that these homes were in the mid-200 range, 250 range?
Up to 280.
Up to 280?
Yes, sir.
So from the low 200s up to 280 price range?
In the Goldsboro subdivision, yes, sir.
In this particular subdivision, yeah. And I know you went all over North Carolina, and I'm not that interested in your detail in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Sure.
But I am right here in Goldsboro.
I don't often have details this close to.
I know it's right here.
Yeah, it's hard to beat that.
It is. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Chairman, that is all of our evidence. I don't know if the owners would like to speak. We, of course, have a right to cross-examine witnesses. We try not to do that. I might want to offer a couple of minutes rebuttal at the end, depending upon what's said.
Okay. I know there were people who did want to speak, so if you would come up now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Nancy Pilkington Mills, and I reside at 409 South Cottonwood Drive. I own part of the property that's being considered for the solar farm. This property was bought by my grandparents, Lester and Nancy Crumpler Howell, many years before I was born. They were lifelong residents of the Stony Creek community. It was since inherited by my uncle, their son, and then upon his death, his son, who is a resident of Sarasota, Florida, inherited it. He had this approximately 44-acre farm for sale for several years with no takers. And the longer I looked at that for sale sign there, because this is a tenant home there, is where my family was living when I was born, so I was brought from the hospital to a little tenant house there that belonged to my granddaddy. And we lived there for 9 years until Mom and Daddy were able to build a home somewhere else. So it was a special property to me. And I just was so concerned of who was going to get it and what they were going to do with it. I talked to my cousin in Florida, would he be willing to sell it to me? And he was willing to, so I bought it. And it wasn't long thereafter that I was approached about this. Actually approached about selling it, and I said, oh my goodness, no, I just bought it. I am not going to sell it. So this was an opportunity to lease it to someone and maintain the ownership. Hopefully my sons will be the beneficiaries of that sometime in the future. But I am in support of this project. As a resident of Cottonwood Drive, I am very, very sympathetic with my neighbors. I know they do not want a solar farm right on their boundary, their property line. I can understand that. I happen to be across the street from it. But these people who are speaking with concerns about its location right by their home, I can assure you that, and them too, that this is a matter well thought out. And I'm very appreciative for the company and the efforts they make, and that the state of North Carolina and Wayne County too has done what they have needed to do to try to protect homeowners, families, you know, for what could be. Because if you didn't have the guidelines, some bad things could happen next to us. But we do appreciate it. I certainly am in favor of the go-ahead of the solar farm as one of the property owners. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Morris Pate. I'm the third generation of property owner of this land. My father owned the land before I inherited upon his death. His name was Dewey, and his wife was named Grace Pate. My grandfather, Brantley, and his wife, Eva Pate, were the owner of that property before me. I grew up on this property. There was a lady that lived on this property for several years in an old house, so old that you had to draw water from a well. That's where I learned to do that. There wasn't an indoor bathroom. You had to go to an outhouse. I grew up with this lady as my father was putting in tobacco on that very farm. I played in the dirt. Matter of fact, I heard when it was announced that I was born, my brother and my sister were at the pack house on that farm taking out tobacco. So I have a long tie with this piece of property. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the solar farm. 2 years ago, I was contacted about some property that I had over there. They were looking at using some of our land to develop this solar farm. And I have roughly 18 acres over there. And currently, I rent it out to a local farmer, Mr. Clark Dahl. And I said, well, you want just a few acres? Why don't we use all of these 18 acres? I was looking at a means for providing for my family. I am a teacher here in the state of North Carolina. And I'm not out to try to hurt anyone. I have a lot of friends and family that live over there in Belfast close to this property. I'm just looking at a means to provide for my family. I have a young daughter who is at Wayne School of Engineering, and in the next 2 years she'll be going to college. And I look at this as a means to be able to fund her higher education. She tells me right now she wants to go to law school and be involved in politics. I'm also a driver's ed instructor, which affords me the opportunity to ride around. I work in Johnston County. And when I ride around and teach driver's ed in Johnston County, also in Wayne County, I see solar farms besides subdivisions. I see solar farms right next to churches. Matter of fact, I have a solar farm within the boundary almost of my school on about, roughly, if I had to guess, 15 or 20 acres. They're a growing part of our environment as you ride around here in Wayne County. You see them on top of people's homes. You see them on top of the Target retail store right here in Goldsboro. So with this said, I didn't take the path that my father or my grandfather did. I'm not a farmer, but I have inherited the farmland. I'm not growing tobacco. Hopefully, I'm going to be growing energy for everybody to be able to use, and hopefully keep some of those energy prices down in the future. Gentlemen and ladies, thank you for your time and allow me to speak.
Thank you. Anyone else? Morning, Mr. Flowers.
Good morning. Arnold Flowers, 3601 Arrington Bridge Road, Seven Springs, 919-222-1470. First of all, I have no, I'm neither opposed or in favor of the existing project. The Board of Commissioners will just have to make a decision on this, but I do want to enter some things that I consider to be creditable facts on this ongoing issue of solar farms. I am a North Carolina registered forester. My family has had a career in the timber business. My registration number is 1215. And speaking as an advocate of forestry, we had an industry down in Duplin County. You may know where the Guilford East plant is, joining it. It was called. That industry closed a few years back, and I was not privileged to be in the decision-making process, but the word on the street was that the reason they closed is because they lost their contract with Duke Power, because Duke Power was able to get a sufficient amount of renewable energy from their solar farms. Okay, so the solar farms, having said that, infringes on another industry, which is renewable energy in the form of logging slash. Now, also, there's been a lot of conversation about runoff from this piece of property, but so you know the whole picture, there's an issue of air quality, and if you wanted to improve air quality, carbon absorption, you would leave it as a farm, or even better yet, make it a tree farm. So there's that issue as well. But to me, the prevailing issue in Wayne County is the encroachment on what I consider to be premium farmland. And in looking on the ground where these solar farms are put, they're taking out of production some of the best farmland in Wayne County, or forestry land. I haven't seen one where they cleared the land, but when I say farming and forestry goes hand in hand. One of the greatest threats to forestry and farming is urban sprawl. Well, a solar farm is obviously a type of urban sprawl. And when you put a solar farm on it, you're not going to raise any more corn, beans, or timber on it. So in Wayne County, I believe I'm correct in saying that we have a moratorium on hog farms. At some point, our leadership felt like that maybe there was enough hog farms in Wayne County. I think it might be wise for the Board of Commissioners to consider at some point a moratorium on solar farms, and that it is an encroachment on your very valuable farmland. I was told, and we don't think about this on a day-to-day basis, but I was told that our new bypass around Wayne County, the new 70 bypass, took 1,000 acres of farmland out of production. So there's this constant encroachment on farmland, and the very best farmland. Another way of consideration on this issue is another issue we're going to speak to next, and that is the flood ordinance, which I want to speak to that too. But they always put these solar farms on the very best land. There are places in Wayne County, perhaps in the floodplains, that you could push solar farms to. But anyway, those are my thoughts on this subject. I personally am not, I live at Seven Springs. I'm not opposed or in favor of this ongoing project, but those are some things I consider to be credible facts. I'm going to share them with you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name's Daniel Stafford. I live at 413 North Cottonwood Drive. This farm is adjacent to my property. I have a concern about the buffer setback. I'm not clear, you're saying it's 150 feet from the house, or is it 150 feet from the property line, or is it 50 feet from the property line? I'm in the close section on this map that I've got. It's almost on my back doorstep. I see that the thing is, the red line that I have, it's not centered in the field. The setbacks are different on each side of the field. So I was wondering why the setbacks are closer to the Cottonwood side than, or centered up on the best side. Not opposed completely to this, but I am concerned about it encroaching on the residential section of this map. I foresee, and we got 37 acres here that's going to be disturbed, dust flying everywhere, because we have it always once a year when the farmers farm, and that's not a problem. But this is going to take six months to a year to build, especially 37 acres. There's a buffer zone right here, where you see where the tree line is, and on both sides. I propose that you cut the solar farm off at this particular location. That eliminates us getting involved with it in the housing area. That reduces the size of the solar farm that's requested. But I have no objection with the solar farm. I just don't want it right in my backyard, just like you wouldn't want a hog house in your backyard, or you want a nuclear plant sitting in your backyard. You follow me? And I have to look at the potential of reselling my home. My wife and I have been here. I was the building inspector for the city of Goldsboro for 12 years. I worked in engineering, and now I work at the DOD on the base as a project engineer. And we're getting to the age now that we're thinking about leaving Wayne County and moving to the coast, like some of you all might also. She's a school teacher here 36 years in the north end of the county. And we have a big concern about what it would do to our property value, because we've been in the same home, because we moved there out of the city 27 years ago to get away from double taxation. But now we're going to have to face this issue that nobody, an appraisal, I've had my house appraised last year by two different people. Let's get to that. One appraiser said my house went down in value by $12,000. The other appraiser, who was from Wayne County, increased the appraisal by $22,000. Now you can imagine which one the bank wanted me to use and which one I would prefer to use. So my problem is, I don't know the repercussions, but I know I've got 27 pages of bitches and complaints from Brunswick County and New Hanover County about solar farms, being in residential areas with homes of 200,000 plus. And their concern, their biggest concern is the eyesore. A lot of them are going to like a buffer as far as a berm, or because you're going to cut grass anyway, hopefully. Even raising the tree height from 6 feet. I got a 6-foot fence now, so a 6-foot tree's not going to do any good. And then the close proximity of the property that's shown here in red to the back of my home. I have an issue with that. Other than that, I would wish the commissioners would just consider maybe reducing the size of this and staying away from the residential area, or increasing the setback on this particular side of the lots on this property, or centered in the center of the field where both sides have equal buffers. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Okay.
I'm Thomas Burke. I live at 99 Live Oak Drive.
So you'll have to.
I'm sorry?
Try to speak into the microphone. Your
I'm
name again?
Thomas Burke. I live at 99 Live Oak Drive in Goldsboro. It's our property that the guy was talking about, that he thought that something might encroach on the farm. I can tell you with surety, there is nothing on our property that encroaches on that land, unless maybe it's a tree that has been there since the early 1800s. We didn't have anything to do with that, obviously. Okay. I'm not used to this, it's pretty obvious. Okay, I don't even like getting up here.
There are things that I need to call attention to. I don't believe everything that's been said today. I will tell you that in Greene County, they require a 300-foot setback. In Johnson County, the commissioners asked for a 500-foot setback. The other thing is, the thing about, NC State did prepare a report that said there was no credible evidence that electromagnetic radiation or magnetic radiation was produced or emitted to cause any kind of medical issues. However, we know that the major power lines, what are these things called? Did you know the name of that?
Transmission line.
We know the transmission lines, for 30 years, they said this was not an issue, but we know now that people who live near those transmission lines have a 70% greater chance of childhood cancers, including leukemia, multiple sclerosis, miscarriages, somebody help me, what's the other one? Skin cancer. We know that with those lines. We also know, you got to understand, this is Goliath, and we're just little tiny people. These people have, they're from Chapel Hill. I wonder if they would have it in their backyards. I know Chapel Hill would not even allow it. The other issue is, I don't understand, what Neil just said, I don't understand, I can't tell anything about that map, but, Donna, do you have another map? I don't understand why it's in our backyard. I'm sorry. I've never done this before.
That's all right. If you could, do you mind carrying the microphone? Because
If I can remember to do it, I'll do it. But I'm
people
not gonna-
watching can't hear you.
Okay. Do you see what I'm talking about? But on the other side of the field, look how far it is from them. This is a much smaller subdivision. I don't know, as far as houses are concerned, I'm talking about the size and cost of the houses. You see what I'm talking about? Okay, we talked about water runoff. It's hard for me to tell from this map. I'll get this microphone, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I've never done this before. I don't like doing it.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that this is the, I can't really tell by looking at this map. I know I gotta hold it. Okay. I told you guys I've never done this before. I don't like having to do it. I don't like having to do it. This land right here, that's a wetland. That land is flooded pretty much year-round except for the hot part of the summer. That land is owned by was owned by Miss Helen Shaver. She's now deceased, and her daughter and son-in-law own it. Okay, this land back here is owned by Bill Rogers, Mary Rogers, and Sloan Rogers, and his wife. And the water does run off now into their property. I bought this land from Dewey Pate 30 years ago, Donna. Dewey Pate told me that I never had anything to worry about because Les Williford told me that I shouldn't buy that property because they could put a hog farm or a chicken farm back there. Dewey Pate told me that I had nothing to worry about. There would never be anything that would disrupt our family there. I'm getting kind of emotional. I'm trying not to do that, though. but anyway, Dewey passed a year and a half, 2 years ago. I understand that Morris doesn't have to stand up to what his dad said, but I wonder if Morris would want to have one of these in his backyard. Would you have one? You've got land over there too, right? Yes, sir. Would you have one in your backyard? Yes, sir. Then why don't we go ahead and put it there instead of where you're planning to put it? I have tried to put it closer to my house, but I won't because of the power lines.
Okay, so the power line issue comes in there again. Okay, let me tell you something that these guys have not mentioned to you. This is an agency of the federal government. The National Environmental Health Institute has deemed solar panels or the emissions of electromagnetic and magnetic radiation to be carcinogenic because they say that even one photon of electromagnetic energy to be released in our area is not worth the risk. Now, this is a branch of the federal government. It's a little bit bigger than NC State's report. The other thing is,
Electromagnetic energy is sufficient to start massive calcium entry into cells that activate several biological functions. Now, I'm not a doctor, so I don't understand that. We would have to talk to somebody that would understand that. I just don't understand that, but I know that doesn't sound good. So the other thing is, if I can find this, the National Environmental Health Institute is the one that's the division of the federal government that says that they're carcinogenic. Now, if you look all over the computer, you will see that there are a multitude of people who say there is no issue. But the thing with those, what'd you call them, Daniil?
Transmission lines?
With the transmission lines, it took them 30 years to find out. Obviously, I won't be here in 30 years. My granddaughter might be, or she might not be. The issue is, if there's even a single chance, we don't need to have it. I can tell you that in Brunswick County, they have only, since 2005, they've only approved 5 solar farms. They were for 5 acres each. Brunswick County will not allow a solar company to build a solar farm over 15 to 17 acres. I can tell you that in some counties, there's a complete moratorium on solar farms. North Carolina has the 10th largest population in the United States, but we have the 2nd most solar farms. Why is that? We know why. Because we just kind of let people push us over. We let people run over us. California has the largest number of solar farms, but they will not allow you to put it anywhere near a residential area. They will not, it has to be in the desert. That's where they are. They're in the deserts or in the valleys where nobody lives. There's a reason for that. There's also a reason that the federal government says that once a solar farm is decommissioned and all the equipment is taken out, that you have to wait 10 years to know before they'll allow you to do anything with that land. There's a reason for that. I was not able to find the reason, but obviously there is a reason. The other issue is home values. I don't have the facilities that this man has. I don't have the knowledge or ability to do that, but I have read and I have talked to 11 different very large realty companies in other states. North Carolina is kind of slow. There's not a lot of information in North Carolina. But out of 11 very large realty companies, they say that you're going to lose a minimum of 40% if your land borders it, and you'll lose from 40 to 10%. So that's in direct contrast to what the other guy said, but it just hasn't been here long enough, and we're slower to act. That's why we don't have that information here. But they also told me every single one of them could not come up with, none of them could come up with one house that actually bordered a solar farm that was able to be sold. Nobody would buy them. It's that simple. The issue about the flood plain, that land right now, Goodpate's land, dumps water on my property. The guy that tilled it last dug a ditch to dump water on my property. My land floods because of that property now. We know also that the solder used in these solar panels leaks lead into the soil. That lead will leak onto my property. On our property, we have a well right here. We don't want lead. The lead runoff going to our well, going through the ground, going to our well. We also don't want it to go into this wetland. I don't know whether I've said everything that I needed to say here or not, but do I say this or not, Donna? When we built our property many years ago, you got to understand that Nancy Pilkington is a really dear friend of ours, and her children are dear friends of ours. When we built our property, when we built our house 27 years ago, Terry Pilkington, before he died, he came to see us. Somebody had told him we were going to put a mobile home on our property. He begged us not to put a mobile home on our property. He said it would devalue his property. Out of respect for Terry, because Donna had known Terry for 10 years before we even got to Goldsboro. And we've known Terry, since we first came to Goldsboro. But out of respect for Terry, we lived in a really terrible apartment complex because that's all we could get at the time. And that's where 2 of my 3 children stayed. 3 of my 4 children stayed for a little over a year while we were building a house. And it cost us a lot more money in rent than we probably would have gotten had we gotten a mobile home and put it in the back and rented it. But out of respect for Terry, we didn't do that. And I'm asking Nancy, out of respect for us, to reconsider this thing. We don't want it. We don't want to lose 40% of our home value. I don't want Matthew and Taylor to have to worry about lead water runoff. I don't want to worry about lower property values. Donna, show me that scene again. The scene you have on your iPad. Again, I'm going to show you.
But could you kind of,
Sir?
could you kind of tie it in? Finish
Sir?
up? Could you finish up, if you would?
I was going to, yeah.
If you would.
Way longer than me. Are you going to find the picture? This is what it looks like now. What you see, those are our raised beds. How would you like to look out your window every morning instead of seeing this, see solar farms?
I need to see what you're showing. Is that,
That's what the land looks like.
which land is that?
This is the solar farm we're talking about right here. This is the land.
Full of deer.
Sir? Who said something? Did somebody say something? I don't know.
Okay, about that.
Full of deer.
Full of deer? That's true. Yeah, we know the deer won't be there anymore because it'll be fenced off. I can tell you that other commissioners require solar farms to have a 6-foot fence, 3 strands of barbed wire on top of that, and the forestry stuff around it. I can tell you, I told you about a moratorium in some counties in North Carolina. I've told you about what Brunswick County does and many other counties. You know, there have been other counties with moratoriums. I don't know specifically without spending a lot more time than I've already spent. I can tell you that the setbacks are 300 feet or more in Davie County, Forsyth County, and Greene County next door. And as I said, Johnson County tried to get a 500-foot setback. Okay, that's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you. You want that?
If this is our appropriate time for a rebuttal, I do have a few
Yeah,
things.
but we need to wrap this up, and, 'cause we got another.
I know we do.
Right behind this.
Thank you for your patience. I'll be as brief as I can. The statutes do give the applicant a right to rebut. I chose not to cross-examine. As to encroachment on farmland, there are numerous homes, I don't know the exact number, but many homes that could be built on this property as a matter of right under your zoning ordinance. Those homes are permanent. A solar farm only borrows the land, and when it's ready to remove it, you just pull up the post, and it's gone in a matter of weeks, and it can be returned to farming. With respect to dust, there is no clearing of the land that causes dust. The posts, again, are driven in, and it does not take a year to construct them. It takes 2 to 3 months for a facility of this size. That drawing you had with the red line, that's not the property line. That's not the boundary line. That's an illustration line that was just drawn to generally show you approximately where this is. If you want to see where the true houses are and the boundaries, you'd have to look at the survey. Mr. Kirkland showed the closest house. That's just a GIS measurement from a computer to be 145 feet. Mr. Neiman just informed me that the very closest panel to the property line is 151 surveyed feet. And then the house would be, the closest house would even be beyond that. And now, if you just bear with me for a couple of minutes, I have got to address what Mr. Burton said on several points. With respect to the electromagnetic fields, the electromagnetic fields outside of the facility are less than these lights that are above our heads. The electromagnetic fields are less than the refrigerator in your kitchen. This is not a cancer risk. The wetlands that he showed you cannot, by law, be disturbed. That's part of the permitting that's done by the state of North Carolina. You must avoid all of those wetlands. I have been in this business for a long time, and I've done it. I've put up hundreds of cell towers, now solar farms. I have never heard of an agency, nor has Mr. Neiman, who's an engineer, called the National Environmental Health Institute. Never heard of it. We heard a quote from some study saying about how solar farms will cause cancer. That's hearsay evidence. We didn't see those studies. I have no idea what they are, but I can tell you that when North Carolina State, that's right here, says they don't cause health problems, that's your reliable source for something like that. This proclamation that you have to wait 10 years after decommissioning, I have no idea where that is coming from. I'll say it again. There's nothing out there that causes harm to the soil. You pick it up. You can take your hydraulic arm on the back of your Ford tractor and just pull these things up, and they're gone. There is nothing out there that would cause you to have to wait 10 years to have to use it. And then the final point is, talking to all these appraisers across the country, as he says he did, number one, that's hearsay you cannot by law consider, but number two, you didn't see a study and you didn't hear a name. All you heard was a broad brush statement. By law, under North Carolina, you cannot consider how something negatively impacts without an appraisal or a market study. And that's in General Statute 160A-393. We provided you that market study that shows that there were actual sales where the market itself was speaking, it's not somebody's opinion, and these are sales that have actually taken place in this county, not to mention all the other counties around, showing that there is no impact on sale. We thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman. I know it's taken much longer than we anticipated, but I think that our evidence demonstrates that we have adequately met all your standards, and we will add those extra conditions on buffering.
Is there any room for compromise on some of that setback on that property from those houses?
We can move it back some, yes, there is. What kind of compromise are you?
I don't know, the gentleman here wasn't totally against it if it was moved back, and I think if it's moved back a little bit from over there, maybe there's somewhere in between that we can agree and still have the property used as the people, the landowners who legally own this land. So, I'm just asking that.
I would hope that what they might consider is, in addition to the fence, putting up a thick vegetated buffer, 6 feet height at the time of planting, with the guarantee that if the plants die, they'll come out and put them back in, something like that, because they would not be able to see them.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Parker, we have to be out of this Board of Adjustment in order to do any kind of motions or anything, is that correct?
You're going to be acting as the Board of Adjustment, so you will be acting as the Board of Adjustment in this period of time.
Okay,
you do not have to act today if you don't want to. You can.
So if I have a motion to make, I can make it now, is that right?
If it concerns this, yes, sir.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion since I've been on this board and we've been doing solar farms for the last 3 or 4 years. I guess this is the most discussion that we've ever had on a solar farm. What I would like to do is the planning board, I didn't see anywhere where they have pre-approved this. They pre-approved it? Chip?
They reviewed a site plan for approval. They actually approved the site plan. You, as the Board of Adjustments, has to approve the special use permit.
Okay.
They make sure that the site plan meets the setbacks and the signage.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to table this issue on voting today and come back with 2 weeks from now or a month from now. But during that time, have the solar farm and the property owners and these citizens come together and come back to us with a compromise that everyone can live with. I think what's happened is that there may have not been enough communications before today's meeting, and that's the purpose of today's meeting, I'm making a motion that we table this and let the planning board or whoever needs to do this, and then come back in 2 weeks with some adjustments like the berm or whatever we're talking about to try to get a compromise with the property owners around this solar farm.
Before I ask for discussion, could I ask Mr. Parker to step up just for a minute? I had to ask him something that may have a bearing on this. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. I'm sorry.
Can I make one comment?
Sure.
I don't mean to throw a monkey wrench in it, but if you decide to go that route, it needs to be tabled and the developer and the designer, the engineers meet with the property owners, work that out to bring it back before this board. The planning board simply meets to make sure it meets our ordinance that's currently adopted. They are not to negotiate any special conditions that the Board of Adjustment might require.
Okay, just to clarify, that's what my intentions were, but you worded it just right. Thank you,
Mr. Parker,
Chairman.
would it be 2 weeks? Is that would be the time we would need to come back to it, or when?
I would think it would be 4 weeks would take, to get based on what I've heard today, to get it.
Okay.
Get people on the same page.
All right.
4 weeks or sooner.
So you're modifying your motion to
Yes.
4
weeks, yes.
This will be a continuation. We don't have to notice the public hearing, or this will be a continuation of
Yes, yes, correct. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. We'll see you soon. Okay.
Y'all need to get together and try to find.
There you go.
I think there's a,
How, we can send a notice to the neighbors. I don't know how to guarantee who all these people are. We have some of the names. But we'll just do if Mr. Crumpler would help us make sure we have the notification list.
You can access all that online
We'll do
from our
that.
tax office.
Yeah. Can we have a break, sir?
yeah, we're going to have a recess. We're over, man. We need to take a break. I'm sorry. Oh, we have, well, I'm sorry, we have to adjourn first.
That's right, we got to adjourn.
We're adjourned, then we're recessing. How about that? It is what it is. Turn it over to Chip again.
The adoption of the County of Wayne's flood damage prevention ordinance, the flood insurance study, and associated flood insurance rate maps. Remember, we had a couple work sessions on flood maps were redone probably 2 years ago. They were never adopted. They were challenged. And then, so it's been sitting for about 2 years, and then at the first of the year, the Department of Public Safety came up and said those maps were accepted and that we needed to adopt a new flood prevention ordinance as part of it, and we had to have this in place by June the 20th. This had to be done for the County of Wayne in the unincorporated areas. Town of Mount Olive had to do theirs, Seven Springs, Walnut Creek, Fremont, Pikeville, and Goldsboro did their own. So we've done that. So what we are proposing is to add, we advertised it in the newspaper. We ran half-page newspaper ads. We notified every property owner that had property that had some flood zone on it, crossing the property, that lived outside of Wayne County. We notified them by first-class mail. We ran half-page newspaper ads. We advertised it on our county website. We posted the complete ordinance there along with a summary of changes that it's about 9 pages worth of changes. And the legal ad states we are adding additional objectives to Article 1, the statutory authorization, findings of fact, purpose, objectives, Section D, objectives. They add and clarify definitions in Article 2. They're adding new language to Article 3, the general provisions. They're adding new language to Article 4, the administration. They're making revisions to Article 5, the provisions for flood insurance, flood hazard reduction, and making revisions to Article 6, the legal status provisions. Like I say, that the flood insurance studies and the flood insurance rate maps will become effective June 20th, 2018, which coincides with the deadline for Wayne County to adopt the revised flood management measures as a condition of continued community eligibility in the National Flood Insurance Program. So we have to have, in the past, we've had this in place. This is what makes our citizens, makes flood insurance available to our citizens. We have to have certain standards on new construction that when a house is built, and if that house is located in a flood hazard zone, has to meet certain requirements, such as a finished floor has to be elevated 2 feet above the base flood elevation. You have to have the heating, mechanical, and utility equipment that services the residents has to be elevated above 2 feet above the BFE. If it's a commercial building, flood proofing in lieu of elevation can be used, but it clarifies that that flood proofing certification from FEMA, that you would have a local surveyor or engineer fill that out and file that with the local permitting office here when you're applying for permits. So if you're building residential, you have to elevate 2 feet above BFE. That's the same as our previous ordinance. Does clarify that the ductwork is included as part of the utility equipment that services the building. You can have if you're using a commercial building, building a commercial building, you can use flood proofing in lieu of elevation, and you can have that supporting documentation presented for elevation for your building permits. We went over all of this in the work session the last time. I don't know how much do you want me to delve into that, or do you want to open it up for public comments? Yes, sir.
There's nothing to do with FEMA.
Yeah. This ordinance has nothing to do with hazard mitigation grant program for buyouts. It has nothing to do with the community development block grant program for disaster relief. This simply is an ordinance that is put in place in Wayne County on new construction. Doesn't have any effect on any existing construction. Only on new construction. It has to deal with the way a house is built if that house is to be located in a flood hazard. This is a requirement from FEMA if we are to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. So don't get it confused with anything to do with the disaster relief, okay?
And we, in our time frame to do this, or we won't have the same the insurance rates, is that correct?
Yes, we need to have it adopted by June 20th. We wrote the ordinances for the other towns, but not the city of Goldsboro. We have an interlocal agreement, but for us to administer their flood zone ordinances, I don't have all of those for you at this meeting, but at your next meeting, I will have those back before you for your approval, so that you can authorize our inspections office to enforce the floodplain regulations in those towns. We do it already. It was done by a different type it was done with the interlocal agreement, but they used our flood ordinance. Now FEMA wanted them to have their own individual flood ordinance, so that's how they're underway with getting that done now.
Can I?
Sure.
Agriculture exempt.
Agricultural buildings, depends on what type of agricultural building it is.
So there is some exemption
Yes.
for agriculture, is that correct? Not all, but some.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
We'll open it up for public comment. I know we got at least one.
Arnold Flowers, 3601 Arrington Bridge Road, Seven Springs, 919-222-1470. Gentlemen, I own about 120 acres of land. It is in the 1 mile, in the floodplain. It is in the 1 mile jurisdiction of the city of Goldsboro. So, but I'm assuming that this flood ordinance mirrors what the city does. And I wanted to share with you problems that I have run into. I went to the city, my land is in a tree farm, and I went to the city in regards to getting a service pole and some electricity to run an electric fence for some livestock that I wanted to put on this property. And the city engineer told me because it was my property is in the floodway, the majority of it in the floodway, which is more restrictive than the floodplain. But I was told that I would have to get a no-rise certification for the service pole. Now, a no-rise certification, as I understand it, is a document prepared by an engineer that certifies whatever I would put in the floodway would not some kind of way unduly deflect water on someone else, thusly a no-rise certification. I was quoted a figure of $2,500 for this engineering document. This is to put a 10-inch diameter light pole in the ground to hold a meter base on. Now, gentlemen, my property, I don't have any accurate survey data, but I'm going to say that at least 50 acres of it was mined to probably a depth of 10 foot. I'm sure you all know Best Sand and Gravel. They own one of the tracts. I own it at one time and mined it. So in the event of a flood, seeing how my tract has been mined and that 50 acres soil has been removed, actually my property receives a tremendous amount of water that it would not normally receive if it was in its natural state in the beginning. Furthermore, it is a tree farm, and every morning when the sun comes up, the trees are on the property grow a little bit, and within just a day or two's time, the entire 120 acres, the diameter of trees will grow enough to be more than the 10 inches that this service pole was going to displace. So in any ordinance that you pass, it seems like, for want of a better way to say it, the devil is in the details. And this is, you say that it's exempt from agriculture, but I wanted to use it for an agricultural purpose, which was I had a herd of goats I was going to put on some of the land. Which brings on to a further story, and the reason I had a herd of goats is because my son, who has an industry here in Wayne County, wanted to put a wood yard on part of this property. It floods, but that would not have encroached on what we do. But we could not get past all of the government requirements to do that. So we moved up on some hill land that could be used for development without any kind of encroachment for his wood yard. So I sold him some land that I owned that I had this herd of goats on. I wanted to move them down to the river. But that's what I ran into in going and trying to get an electric fence. Then I made a comment about, well, what about if I want to put up a shelter to park my tractor under? My tract of land has got several paths on it, and I bush hog them once or twice a year. And when I go down there, I don't necessarily want to do it all at one time, leave my tractor down there for a few days. So I want to put me up 4 poles in the ground, use some scrap tin, put me a shelter. They told me I would have to have a set of engineered drawings for my shelter. So, and none of this stuff that I wanted to do was I asking any insurance on. So the point, I feel like that as our commissioners, that y'all need to take a real serious look at this ordinance, all of those details, and I'm asking you for some help on that. I don't know the exact land mass it is, but I'm going to say it's probably 10% of the entire county of the land, of the land mass of the entire county is in this ordinance. You're taking a tremendous swap out of the tax base by not allowing basically anything to happen on this land. And I asked you this, since this flood ordinance was in place, and then not when Hurricane Floyd came through, how much construction have you seen in Wayne County that was in anywhere in the floodplain? Out my way, it's a ghost town. It's a wilderness. There is no construction. So anytime somebody goes down and tries to do something, the process of all of these details is so encumbering that you can't do it. Now, having said all of that, obviously as a good citizen, if somebody's going to go build something in the floodplain, they need to put it 2 foot, the floor level 2 foot above. But it's much more than that. It's all of these engineering documents. See, anything that I would put would require, if I was at the letter of the ordinance, would require a set of engineering drawings as far as the poles I put in the ground, because there'd be some water movement. The ordinance as written, and I'm not an attorney, but as written, I can't put a deer stand, a box stand, on my property without being out of compliance. Okay? So, you need to have an ordinance. We need to have flood insurance for folks, to anybody that want it. But all of these details that encroach on recreational use, farming use, and things like that are not necessary. I mean, I just don't, you cannot give me a logical reason why I've got to have a no-rise certification to put a 10-inch diameter pole in the ground on 120 acres of land when the timber's growing every day, displacing water. So I'm asking you to help us out on that some before you pass this ordinance. And as far as the people that want to build something in that area, I throw this out to you. We go down to the coast, we routinely build houses on the ocean. And it's okay. It's a wonderful tax base, millions of dollars of tax base. But here in Wayne County, we have all these restrictions that we put on a piece of land where somebody might want to put a home on that gets 2 foot of water on it maybe once every 50 years. So I'm asking you for some help on those details. We need the ordinance, but those details as far as all the other things that are required for just normal stuff that people do that own property land. I'm asking you for some help on that. Thank you.
Good one, I think, is still one.
About 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Well, I'll be done in 10 minutes. I just saw that article in the newspaper. Apparently, I don't. Oh, you know my name? Okay, my name is Gloria Crowder. Telephone number for my location is 919-731-7938. I'm here representing St. Joseph Free Will Baptist Church, 280 Claridge Nursery Road. I am currently a trustee at that facility. I read the article in the paper because I didn't get anything in the mail and I don't take the paper. So we make a lot of assumptions, Mr. Cromwell. Everybody in Goldsboro read the News August. I do not read that. But at any rate, I saw it and I said, well, you know, I better go to this because I wasn't sure if it meant now or in the future. Now, you did clarify that's for new buildings.
Can I clarify one more?
Clarify.
280,
Claridge Nursery Road.
It's not in our jurisdiction. It's in
See, you know, let me tell you about that one. When we flooded, and we do, because we're surrounded by water, at the county in their own city, whatever, it saw fit that we are totally sitting on an island, and we are surrounded totally by water. We got water in the front, we got water in the canal, we got water in the little river, and somebody in their own wisdom has just built another runoff. So we're going to get flooded, and raising anything 2 feet won't matter. So when I saw that, about 2 feet, and I'm saying, well, I want to build something up a little higher, will that encroach upon this ordinance? Because 2 feet is not going to matter if I even move it up, because it's still going to flood, if you know what I'm talking about. I had a 1,000-gallon tank just filled it before the hurricane, and guess what it did? It went out in the woods. Now, I had to pay the gas company to go get it and put it back where it was supposed to be. And I read those things about gas tanks and all that. Now I had 3 air conditioning units, okay? They were sitting on a slab. So we did have the insight to move all the plugs up. Told what you call that company, air conditioning company, we want to raise them. They put them right back where they were. So air conditioning costs approximately $6,000 a piece. So I don't want to be out of your ordinance, but we don't have a choice. So do I just excuse us from all that because we are surrounded by
All
water?
all your permitting for air conditioning
Mhm.
or any repair work that you do to your home goes through the city of Goldsboro's inspections office, not through ours. This ordinance has nothing to do.
Well, that's good. You keep saying about the city and the county. When I went down, first I called the county because I'm actually located in Wayne County. And I called them up, nope, you ain't in Wayne County, you in the city. I go to the city, you know what the city said? You in Wayne County. You got that? So they're not quite sure where we're located, but we're located off of Highway 70 at the, where the McDonald's is. I'm sure you guys know where the McDonald's is. And that is supposed to be 1 mile in. But the people that work for the city and the county don't know that. I learned that. Now I know. But I still get the same runaround, city, county, city, county. So I don't have to worry about, this church don't have to worry about any of that audience. Are you telling me that?
Not this ordinance.
Oh, well, good. That's all I need to know. Thank you very much. Well, what is the city ordinance?
I couldn't tell you, I don't work for the city.
Now
It'll
you
be
know
very
the
similar.
confusion of lay people when they deal with the government. By the way, I work for the federal government. We're a little better than this. But it's
I don't know about
confusing when you try to run from one place to the other. I've had an engineer, I had it engineered, they know how much they've given me my 2 feet. If the water, 2 feet is nothing. When the water comes waist deep inside a church, what is a 2-foot audience? So, I mean, I got a permit.
It's 2 feet above the base flood elevation.
Well,
not 2 feet off the ground.
no, I understand that. It still doesn't matter.
It could be 6 feet in there.
It still doesn't matter when you're sitting on the little river next door to the canal with a runoff in the front of you and a runoff in the back of you. And the water comes as high as that base all the way around in the church. I had it redone, so I got a city permit. But I got air conditioners on the ground. Thank you very much. But you have to see what we're going through. So I'm still confused what to do, so I'm gonna build my building. Thank you.
Is that in the ETJ?
It's in the ETJ.
That's where we have some issues sometimes as far as who's responsible for what.
No, we don't.
Well, we don't on the county side.
Yeah.
But, you know.
City's
it could be-
responsible for permitting in that 1 mile area.
Yeah, I
And they
understand.
do all the zoning and permitting for that.
Yeah, but I can see where the
And the administration
confusion
of their
coming.
flood ordinance in
Yeah.
that area. This ordinance is outside of that 1 mile in unincorporated Wayne County.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Thank you.
Mr. Crump, is a lot of what's in this plan is not mandated by the state
You
and
got
federal
one
government?
option. You can reduce the 2 foot to 1 foot. If you reduce it to nothing, nobody will be eligible for flood insurance. The requirements in the ordinance are mandated by FEMA as the minimum. The only thing you've adopted additional was way back in 2005, you went to 2 feet over 1 feet, which gave the citizens a discount on their flood insurance rates. If you go back to 1 foot, their flood insurance rates will go up. If you do away with any part of what's requested in this ordinance, flood insurance won't be available.
Sounds like we got a lot of options.
Correct.
Question,
Is FEMA, now back to Mr. Flowers.
I was going to ask about Mr. Flowers.
He's in the 1 mile ETJ. There is a variance process. There is, common sense has to prevail sometimes, and there is a process that you could appeal a decision if that was in our jurisdiction. Obviously, a meter base is something that is not an encroachment, and you can appeal to the Board of Commissioners. I would think the city's ordinance would say the city council, if it's in there. I haven't read their ordinance, I don't go through it, but we do have, that is an option that you can have, and we have it in our ordinance. So obviously, a meter base, if it was in Wayne County, is in a non-encroachment area. It's permitted in a flood zone. It's just not permitted in an encroachment area without a no-rise certification. But obviously, 1 pole is not the diameter of a tree that would just randomly grow there. When you get into talking about agricultural buildings, an agricultural building doesn't require a building permit. The only thing an agricultural building requires is an electrical permit. So when you get into a flood zone and you're pulling a permit and you're going to add electrical and it's in a flood zone, then that electrical has to be proven to be elevated, but the building does not. So when you ask if it's an exemption, it is technically, because they're not required to have building permits.
So one question, back to the lady issue. She has to go through the city. Is that what the finance is?
Correct. It's not even close.
And
Sir.
she said she got a permit from the city, so she's been through the city.
And the city probably has the exact same ordinance. I know they have 2-foot freeboard. They probably have a variance procedure in place. It probably goes back through their council. They had to adopt this by June the 20th as well. They did their own. I haven't read it. I'm not sure that they're to the final stages yet with it, but she should have received a notice from the city, or they probably posted it, a half-page newspaper. It's treated just like a rezoning case. It's so large that because of the number of affected property owners, we can run a half-page newspaper ad. And then anybody that does not live in Wayne County gets notified by first-class mail, and that's the option we took. Inside the city, I don't know if they have as many affected property owners. I don't know what route they took, but she should have received notice. The News Argus is the local, newspaper that the ad would need to run in, so.
I did not receive notice, but I did get flood insurance. I have flood insurance, so I was trying to figure out, is this going to affect my flood insurance?
No, ma'am.
I'm good.
Yes, sir.
I don't need to speak, but I just want to ask for a point of clarification on the tanks. Is that, if you have existing tanks to the?
No, sir, that would only be on new tanks, correct.
And then there's a 50% if you do restoration, if you have a fire.
That's correct. That's in the existing ordinance already. Yep, that's all existing. There's nothing new there. He's asking if a house was damaged, at what percentage do you consider it a repair, or is it a complete rebuild? 50% of the pre-flood damage is determined by the tax card on the structure is what's used. And that's the way the ordinance has been forever. And nothing's changing there.
I don't want to belay this, but I would hope that if a citizen of Wayne County goes to our planning department in order to get a permit to put a pole in for electrical, that we could find some way to give him an exemption. Does the planning department or the building inspections department have the authority to give that exemption?
No. He can apply for a variance to this board right here for an exemption in the ordinance.
And I think we need to try to address that to where they can
He's
handle it.
not in our jurisdiction.
Yeah, it's just.
I understand, but I'm just saying if it was in our
Yes. Oh, yeah.
jurisdiction. And if they came, certainly we would not require them
No.
to have to fill out paperwork and come before the Board of Commissioners in order to get an exemption to put a service pole up.
I have a question. Is there any way that the county commissioners and the city can collaborate together and make it happen?
Make what? But his pole?
Like-
No, sir. They are their own floodplain administrators. They have their own flood map number. They're their own community number with FEMA. They're responsible for the administration of their ordinance. We have no say-so in their flood ordinance or their flood maps or anything.
Whose district was he in?
It's in the city of Goldsboro.
City of Goldsboro.
Huh?
It's the 1 mile jurisdiction of Goldsboro.
Oh, my gosh, I didn't realize it was that close in. Okay.
Now, where he lives is not.
No.
This is property he owns right out on
Aaron
Down
Drew.
Ridge
Okay,
Road.
well, that's where I was confused. We keep throwing everything back on the city, but now I understand, the 1 mile ETJ. Okay, I got it.
Anything else?
Yeah, I need some aspirin.
Me too.
Council, do we vote on, can we vote on this now, or do we come out, close the hearing? We can come. All right. All right, the hearing is closed. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move adoption.
Got a motion on the floor to approve. Any discussion?
I think we've had enough
I
discussion.
think so too. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Thank you, Chip. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. We talked about that at length earlier this morning, seemed like days ago. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move we consent agenda.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you.
Oh, my goodness, it's the second page.
I know, but we're gonna move it quick. I'm gonna ask Mayor Powers to come up, because we're gonna be, he's gonna read the proclamation for the EMS week.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I appreciate you having us over here. I'm going to have Brian Smith, EMS manager, come up, Alex Westbrook, the assistant EMS manager, and then Nanette Sutton, our Wayne Net administrator. And these are the individuals that make sure our EMS system runs like it does. We have probably second to none is our EMS system, and it's thankful to support from you guys and the county manager that allows us to have the system we do. And I think it's only fair and right that I allow the EMS manager to read the proclamation out.
As the EMS manager, I'd like to thank y'all for supporting us here in the county with our EMS service and be able to serve the citizens of Wayne County. EMS Week proclamation. Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of the Wayne County Emergency Medical Service teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas the emergency medical services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, firefighters, educators, administrators, emergency nurses, emergency physicians, and others. And whereas the members of the emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of the emergency medical services provides by designating Emergency Medical Services Week. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Wayne County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim the week of May 20th through 26th, 2018 as Emergency Medical Services Week in Wayne County, with the theme EMS Strong, Stronger Together, and encourages all citizens to observe this week with appropriate programs and ceremonies and activities. Adopted this day, 15th day of May 2018.
Is there a motion on the floor to approve the proclamation is read?
So moved.
We got a motion on the floor. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you, sir.
Great job that you do for us.
Thank you.
Okay, next is our Wayne County Public Library expectations for behavior.
In your agenda packet, you have a recommendation from the library board, but also our county attorney. We have had some issues with unruly behavior at our libraries, and this would give our library staff and our security officers there a little bit more authority in removing the situation quicker instead of going through a long process. So be glad to read it if you'd like.
I think we've already read it.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve the disruptive behavioral policy revision? Motion on the floor. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the, we're going to have a motion to approve a public hearing on June 5, 2018 at 9:15 a.m. to receive public comments regarding the FY 2019 budget. Is there a motion on the floor? Got a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Okay, next is motion to award an inmate food services for Wayne County Detention Center to Trinity Services Group.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. We have sent out requests for proposals. We received 2 back. We rebid it again and did not receive any more. We would like to recommend Trinity Services Group, who was the lowest responsible bidder, to serve the food at the jail.
Is there a motion to approve the Trinity Service Group as recommended? Got a motion on the floor. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All right. NCACC Video of the Week.
Maybe the camera won't work. We did.
So the camera won't work.
Hello and welcome to this week's. This week we're looking forward to the end of May when the NCACC will hold its yearly premier advocacy event, County Assembly Day. County Assembly Day is an opportunity for North Carolina county officials to meet with and hear from state legislative leaders, and to meet with their state legislative representatives. The NCACC will host its 2018 County Assembly Day on Wednesday, May 30th at the North Carolina Museum of History in downtown Raleigh. A brief program in the morning will be held at the museum, which is directly across Jones Street from the General Assembly. The activities begin in the morning with a legislative update from NCACC staff and remarks from leaders of the General Assembly. Registration will open at 8 a.m. at the museum, and the morning program will be convened at 8:45. Program content will run from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. After the morning program, attendees will visit the legislative building to meet with members of their delegation and to advocate on behalf of their counties. And we encourage county officials to make appointments to meet with legislators, if possible, after the 11 o'clock closing of the morning session through the end of the day. Lunch will be served on the lawn outside of the General Assembly, and members are encouraged to invite their legislators to join them for lunch. It will be served between 11:30 and 1:30 on the Halifax Mall. Attendees can drop in any time during the 2-hour time frame to have lunch, and you can bring your legislators along if they don't already plan to attend. The event is a great opportunity for county officials to present their local stories and issues to legislators here in Raleigh, where they will be making the decisions that affect their constituents. We hope to see you here on May 30th. Well, that's all we have for this week. Please email communications@ncacc.org with any questions about anything we've covered here. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
All right. County manager's comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and what I would like to do, I guess Carol will flip it for me, is in front of you, you have a copy of the manager's recommended 2018-19 fiscal year budget. And as the board's aware, we've spent a lot of time 2 weeks ago on our CIP, and we are now at the point where, okay, thank you, Carol. We're now at the point where we'd like to make the recommendation and start the process and talk about tax rates and those type issues and our workshops as we move forward. Again, the biggest thing, we do have all this in your budget message. That's about 8 pages, but I wanted to give you just a quick overview. What we're recommending in this year's budget is a 69-cent tax rate, which is an increase over this year by 2.65 cents. Again, the positive thing about that is we're not recommending using as much general fund unappropriated fund balance as we did last year. So we're down $1.2 million from that use in this year's budget. There are strong reasons why we're looking at recommending a tax increase at this time. Just for an FYI, these are our surrounding counties and their current tax rates as of 17-18. So we have Wilson, Johnson, Lenoir, Greene, Duplin, and Sampson. And even at 69, we are still the lowest in our area. But again, as I mentioned, there are major reasons why we are looking at recommending a tax increase at this time. One of the issues that this board has really been looking at and concerned about and involved in is trying to do something for the supplements for our teachers. And even though we are very far behind our competitors in Johnson County, this is the start of a process to increase that supplement by 0.5%. And again, it's a good start as we move forward. But again, as you're aware, supplements are local costs that counties have to pick up. So even at a 0.5% increase, it is a $500,000. Just an FYI, we did have a $154,000 increase due to the funding formula that we have with the school system. And this was approved by the school board, this board, and our past county manager, George Wood, worked on that. One of the big issues in this year's budget is the loss of low wealth funding. Last year, we lost $2 million. This year, it'll be about $1.5 million. So in order to try to help with that, we worked with, and I want to thank our Chairman Pate and Vice Chairman Gurley a couple weeks ago, or last week, we met with Representative Bell, who's really trying to help us attain a little bit more of our low wealth funding. He's able to help. I believe we're going to get half of that back. So we will get $700,000 back as part of the funding, but that still leaves us $800,000 short on the low wealth funding. So that's the reason why we have that in there. The other issue that we have is we've agreed at it mid-year, but it's a new expense for next year, is our SROs. School resource officers at the 4 schools that we currently do not have school resource officers yet. This board has made it a strong priority to look at school safety and the safety of our children. So we have added school resource officers and the capital associated with it to this year's budget.
You might mention that, there might be some potential grants for those SROs.
We are still working on some additional grants, as the chairman stated, for SROs. We don't know about if whatever's funded will be after July 1. But we are working on that, and again, appreciate our delegation and Representative Bell for that. I want to throw this in here. We've always talked about the effective tax rate for the low wealth funding. This is how it has been over the last 4 years. This year, it actually went down to 66.8. So if we do go to 69 cents, we will be well within, I think, as far as the low wealth funding tax rate. So if there's any questions. One of the things we want to make sure that we deal with is our county employees, who are really our most important asset. Recommended a 1% cost of living increase, a COLA that will be across the board. The other 1%, what we're recommending is that go in, be a part of a merit. And again, that is earned and not given. So we will put aside 1%, and our employees will be able to qualify that if they qualify due to their performance review, which will be done in July and August. As you're aware also, we really had a good year with our health insurance. Health insurance, we had an increase of 3.5%. This year, there are no plan changes. If you remember last year, I think originally we looked at an 18% increase. We had plan changes, and we had major plan changes, even to get it down to 11.6%. So this year, we don't have to look at any plan changes, but again, only a 3.5% increase, so which is a good thing for our employees, but also a good thing for the county as well. But we'll also add that increase to the family health, the part that the employee pays as well. Debt, we talked about, needing the tax increase. We did the bond financing. We talked about that this is a $2 million bridge year that we will have in additional debt due to bond financing. Next year, we will have $1.7 million come off of our debt payments. However, we still have that bridge this year of a $2 million gap. So you add the $2 million debt, you add in all the school additional funding we are recommending, that's where we're looking at a tax increase. And also, we did not want to dig into our fund balance any more than we had to. One of the things I want to go over real quickly, we are looking at new budgeted positions. And really, the budgeted positions that we're recommending adding is to meet the goals and objectives of the Board of Commissioners. One that we're looking at is a community paramedic. That is one of the top goals that we came out of at our board retreat in January, saying we want to do community paramedicine. The next one we want to look at is an internal auditor. We've had some issues over the past few years. It would be an important thing for us to make sure that we have an internal auditor that we can check on things ourselves. So we do feel like that finance does need that additional staffing But that is a concern that I've heard from the board, is something that we need to do and move forward with. We talked about the 4 school resource officers. The other position we're looking at is a computer systems administrator. We're going to do that basically like we do at the jail. We have an IT person that is basically housed over at the sheriff's department. Works for Ryan, but is specifically at the sheriff's department. The positive thing about this position is half of that can be funded through reimbursements through DSS. So we spend a lot of time there now. Part of the thought process is if we can get some funding for it, it may help ease some of our IT overload. Again, major capital expenditures. We went through about a 4-hour workshop 2 weeks ago talking CIP. One of the things that I heard from this board was we needed to look at cutting back some of our CIP, especially going into a tough budget year. But these are a couple of the things that we have still kept in. We still have to do our sewer evaluation of our Genoa system. It's not the full funding of it, but we need to start that process. In talking with Kendall, we need to be able to identify where the problems and where our I&I issues are so we can begin addressing and fixing. So we have money in to evaluate that. The next project is Will Sullivan renovation. It's a building across the street. As you know, we're currently in the process of moving WCDA. Once we move WCDA to their new location on Mallory Street, we will then move Board of Elections into the WCDA meeting or space. Once we do that, we'll move probation and parole into where Board of Elections is. And we have some real issues that we need to look at in the Will Sullivan building. It's going to be more than $200,000, but this is a good start to at least begin evaluating what we really need to do there. The other issue is one of the things that I've heard from this board is vehicle replacement and making sure that especially our emergency services, that our vehicles are up to date. We're looking at 2 new ambulances, one for Wayne Dat and one for EMS. And then for the sheriff's vehicle replacement, we're looking about 10 vehicles. And again, budget challenges. One of the things, and I think this is going to come up at our next meeting, is we're going to talk about the county office building. We still have issues that we've got to address with the county office building that houses DSS and our health department. It's an awful building. And I think I applaud the board for saying we need to take a look at it. We need to do something else. But we don't have funds set aside at this point to do any renovations or any new construction. But whatever we do, that's going to be a large ticket item. So just want to prepare you, that's coming down the road, but that's not in the budget. The next one I want to talk about is our OES building, our 911 OES building. We have $4 million set aside for that capital project. We're working on additional grants with the 911 board now, and I appreciate the work that Mel and his staff is doing. And we have bid this out, or we're in the process of bidding it out, and we're waiting for July 12th to see what the bid numbers are. And if it comes in at $4 million,
We'll be all happy.
I'll hug everybody. I'll hug everybody, and I'll buy ice cream. But I think it's a safe bet. I'm not hugging everybody and buying ice cream. So we're going to have some capital needs that are coming up. Again, that we're going to have to look at funding. That's one of the reasons why we did not want to hit fund balance as much, because we had a difficult year this year as well. So, again, just a quick update on our volunteer fire departments. Only 2 departments this year have asked for an increase, and that's Wayland asking for a 2-cent increase, if you remember that, when Mount Olive came and made the presentation, and Salisbury has asked for a 1-cent tax increase, but everybody else remains flat. So next steps, again, this is a very quick 50,000-foot overview. You have light reading for the next couple of weeks in front of you. So we have two work sessions scheduled on the proposed budget for May 30th at 10 a.m. and May 31st at 10 a.m. That will be here in this room. And we have our departments are scheduled to be here if you have any specific questions of them that finance or myself and Chip cannot answer. And then we have our budget public hearing set for June 5th now, right? So after June 5th, we just need to approve it anytime before July 1, 2018. So that's the quick down and dirty. There's a lot more in the budget message. There's a lot of assumptions that we've made. But we did want to get this budget to you in your hands so you can start looking at it. And if you have questions or concerns, we now have a couple of weeks that we can kind of get those questions answered before our workshop in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Any quick questions that you may have?
Are you posting that online as well?
We can. Be glad to. Yes, sir.
When is the lease agreement over on the Purcell building?
I'm not sure.
The reason I asked that question, because that would be a saving of $40,000 if we can maybe rearrange. We actually could move Purcell and the Will Sullivan over to the Board of Election building and just let them double bump for a while.
That's what
I
know Noel's watching, so she should know that.
Yeah.
We can certainly.
But no, that's a very good idea. Yes, sir. Thank you.
They may have a different attitude, you know?
Have one question. When we go to the proposed tax rate of .69 what is the outlook for the next, all of 2018 and all of 19? In other words, how near in the future will we may have to look at another tax increase?
Well, you got, also next year we look at revaluation, is our revaluation
That's
year.
going to be
So,
the key, yeah.
So that's next year, and when we have some of this debt coming off, that's going to help. We put off some capital this year. I think it'll also allow us to build our fund balance back up a little bit this year. So we're still meeting the needs for our employees as well. This will put us in a good position right now. I hate to look too far down in the future, but I think for right now it's really a good place to be. It meets our low wealth concerns as far as the tax rate of what the effective tax rate is. So we've spent a lot of fund balance recently, and that's one of the big concerns I think this board has as well. Is we want to make sure that we don't spend too much.
And we're going to have to pay attention to the tax rate if you expect to get the low wealth.
That's exactly right.
Right, and I think this will comfortably put us in a position not to worry about the low wealth, at least short term.
Just to follow up on that same subject, if we didn't have the low wealth formula included in this, could we absorb the rest of the increases in our budget if we didn't have the low wealth formula? In other words, would we need a tax increase if the low wealth formula wasn't in there? Did we ask our departments to cut 2 or 3% here and there in order to cover normal budget?
What we did is we went back and we cut about $1 million out of the CIP from what you saw. That was a kind of a management decision, what we did on that. The reason why I would recommend, we are fairly tight, I think, if you look at the increases, we've done that in the last 2 or 3 years. It's cut 2% here, cut 2%. The departments have not had a large increase in operations. So I think they are running fairly lean. The issues that we have really for the tax rate also, it really is the bridge of $2 million and the fund balance, and making sure, along with the low wealth and the SROs and those type things. That's where we're putting a lot of our emphasis on in this year's budget and supplement.
I have a problem. I'm sorry, go ahead.
We should have never cut the taxes down below where the low wealth formula was kicking in. And I mentioned that, but nobody listening. We had it exactly where it should be at that one point when we made that last cut. We should have never made that cut.
But
because we just cut ourselves out of $2 million.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I was, just one final thought. I don't like the tax increase, no matter what it's for. And what I was fishing for was that if we could absorb our budget increases other than the low wealth formula, if the legislature is going to follow through like they're hoping to do something about the low wealth formula criteria, would it be possible that we could not have a tax increase and take the $2 million for the low wealth formula this year out of the fund balance and not have a tax increase?
You can always get a fund balance. You always can. And however, we've hit it fairly hard this year.
Yeah.
And kind of the goal was not to try to hit it as hard. We've done a lot of capital projects.
Yeah.
And we have done a lot of, and we still have EMS that we're building out, we're bidding out. So we don't have the bids back from EMS as well. We have OES. So we're still probably going to have to hit fund balance for some of these capital projects. So and I hate my first budget that I'm having to come up and recommend it.
Well, if we're going to have a 6 cents, for example, just pick a figure, if we're going to have to do a 6 or 8 cent over the next year or 2 years, why do it a little bit at a time? Why don't we just go ahead and let the citizens know what the worst case is going to be and go for it? That's my point. That's my point. Rather than going back to the till,
well, right now, I don't think, in talking with finance, that looking at also reval next year, and there may be some things coming down the line. There may be some change in how the state figures up solar.
Yeah.
The rebates may not be as large. There are things that may be changing, and we're, again, working with our delegation about some additional grant funding. So I hate to say, I'm very comfortable. Would you say that's we're comfortable looking at our fund balance and looking at our debt and looking at our capital projects and needs, that I'm right now, I don't think I'm going to have to come back and say I need another 3 cents next year.
Okay, thank you.
I was just going to follow up on that. We talked to Representative Johnson. They're working on a long-term low wealth formula that makes sense. And I said, well, when are you going to pass your budget? Because if y'all remember last year, we had to extend out. If Representative Bell hadn't found that $2 million for us, we'd have raised taxes last year, or going back into our fund balance. I think that, knock on wood, that we're going to see some things that are going to help us in this, and I don't know whether the entire raise is necessary, but I want to make sure that we're above that low wealth formula. And we may get more than 700,000. I mean, this is all high in the sky stuff until they raise their hands and vote up in Raleigh. But he seemed to be pretty optimistic there was some good things coming.
Yes, sir.
But we just had to wait and see. And the other issue, and I know there's arguments for and against raising taxes, go ahead and jump it on up or do it increments. It's just me. I favor doing it a little at a time. I just hate to hit people that hard, especially in a reval year. We don't know what's going to happen. That's just my opinion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
If I could make a comment on it, and that is, The legislature seems to work on their own schedule, and I agree with you, John. We should not have lowered the tax rate to be below the threshold that would cut $2 million from Wayne County schools. We were fortunate to replace it one year. We may replace some of it this year, but it only makes common sense that if you, in fact, for every dollar you raise local taxes, you're going to have a matching guaranteed of getting it from the state for the school system. Secondly, I do want to point out that we did increase spending.
We did.
The spending increases are almost necessary, and that is that we currently have a supplement in Wayne County for teachers of 6.5%. Is that correct?
I believe it's 6.
Is it 6?
6, and going to 6.5.
All right, so it's 6%. Now, I want you to keep this in mind. We are competing against the same teachers to get them here to Wayne County, and we're offering a 6% supplement. Johnston County is offering 11 cents, so almost twice the supplement that we're offering.
2 gallons of gas.
And I hate to get into a bidding war, but we are going to have to come close to what our neighboring counties are offering if we're going to attract teachers here. I hear a lot about getting qualified teachers for low-performing schools. The only way we're going to be able to attract them is to actually increase our supplement. We all know it. It hasn't been addressed in a dozen years. So that was $500,000. The other thing is school resource officers. You know, we've got to provide that. We've already committed to that, and that's $750,000. So even though it may appear like we're bringing in $2 million more, these are necessary things for us to do. Now, can we find cuts? I hope we can, because we got a whole book here to try to find them in, and we're going to have fun trying to do it. But I can see that we really need to prepare going into the next budget year that we have fulfilled the requirement for low well funding in our county.
And we know that there's cuts at the board, and we want you, and that's your responsibility to make sure and go through this thing and with the fine tooth comb and make sure that we didn't miss anything. So we can find it, and we will work with you, and that's why I'm excited about our workshops and that the board, and this gives you a couple of weeks to ask questions, and if you got any issues or concerns, we can bring those answers to us, or answers to you at our workshop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
All right.
Ms. Bailey, since you were talking, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Oh, okay.
I had one meeting. The NC East Alliance meets down in Greenville, and as you know, we as a county with NC East Alliance go all the way back to when it was Eastern Region. But in case you haven't heard, John Chafee, the president of NC East Alliance, has announced his retirement April of next year. So we're sort of in the process of looking to see who our next president will be at NC East Alliance. And of course, I know that Wayne County this is our last year of what we call freebie representation on the NC East Alliance. So I know that Wayne County is looking at whether or not we want to be a part of the NC East Alliance. But just a matter of information that John Chafee is planning on retiring April of next year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was at our meeting this past Friday.
Mr. Camardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did have one committee meeting since we last met, and that was Board of Health. They went through several things, but one of the more interesting things was they inspect food establishments, and when they, it's kind of interesting, when they did their recheck, one stayed the same, but the other ones were able to correct their deficiencies. And so I was happy to hear that one of them did stay the same, and I won't name it, but that firm is going to have to work to raise their rating, although there was no indication they had to close down. It wasn't that bad. The most interesting thing that this commissioner has been involved in over the last week, I got a telephone call from a young lady in Mount Olive, and she had been referred to me by the town manager, I think she said town manager and the town's mayor, to work on a flooding problem. And I wish that I had had the expertise of some of those people here this morning to be out at Mount Olive, but the person who had been working with us through DOT, Mr. Giles Harrells, has moved on to Wilson County, I think, but his replacement is a very helpful young man named Mr. Lawhorn. And sometimes folks say that DOT would not respond to you, but I called them last week, didn't get a telephone call back, but yesterday, I think it was yesterday, it had been, because that's, day is Tuesday, it had been yesterday. I went on out to, in the middle of another meeting I had, I went on out to the headquarters out on 70 and got it with a young man who replaced. And he got a crew down to look at what this young lady's problem is. The Crest Drive area in Mount Olive has had problems over time. And so it came to mind, with the help of our new planning officer, he sent some information so I could look at what we had going on. And but DOT has discovered that their culverts are all right, but they have a blue line ditch that runs behind this young lady's house, and it determines that this land is too flat as it relates to the culverts and the water going through there. So at some point, it looks like X amount of water is going to be in the ditch, and the only thing that can happen is that it will have to dry up. Water won't run on flat land, and it won't run uphill. So it would have to dry up. But just in part of the conversation, to do anything with that ditch, it would take the Corps of Engineers, who is a federal agency, not a local or state agency, and the permitting alone would run $70,000 to get the permits to do anything to this blue line ditch. Talking about bureaucracy. But I assure to the public that this commission won't stop there. We're going to take this to its final conclusion, wherever that is. And Mr. Gray, I'll be bothering you and asking for your assistance. But there needs to be something done broadly in Wayne County about the draining of the low areas in Wayne County. And I don't know who's going to be the final answer to that. Probably do anything with it, we're going to have to raise tax rates a lot more than that, what Joe mentioned a few minutes ago. But property owners deserve some help. And Mr. Gray, I don't know what we're going to be able to do, but we're going to try to do something. That's my comment.
All right, Mr. Daugherty.
Several of us went on a tour of some of our schools a week or so ago. And folks, we've got some real issues. But one of the issues is this board approved almost 2 years ago some improvements in those facilities. And the school board has, for whatever reason, not moved forward with that. And I think the chairman and the county manager are going to be meeting and getting us a report back on that, because we need to press for that. If this board is going to approve facility improvements, then the school board needs to step up to the plate and see that it's done in a very timely manner. And yes, school board, I'm calling you out. Second thing I do want to point out very quickly, and that is, for some reason, I have been confused with another issue that's going on with the city council. I did sell my home in Walnut Creek, and I did rent an apartment, a townhouse in Goldsboro, within my district, and I do in fact live in my district of District 6. And I just wanted to clarify, I'm not on the city council, and I do meet all the residency requirements. Do what now?
Is that address available?
That address is available. It's 125 Oxford Drive. I'm not afraid of someone coming by and taking a shot. Well, maybe I should be. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Aycock.
But you can't have a major living arrangement. You can live in more than one place. You
That's
don't
right.
have to live in the same place. You just got to have your address at that particular location.
Mr. Aycock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Been busy. It's graduation time at the college. I did attend the Law Enforcement Memorial Service out at the college last week. I also attended several of the graduations. I didn't make them all, but I attended several of them. And also, just for information, today was the date that the announcements were made on the 50/50 grants that several of the fire departments in the county applied for. I do not know how many of them was granted, but I do know that the department that I'm on, we were awarded a 50/50 grant of $54,000, and we will, we'll get half of the $54,000 for equipment, and I'm quite sure that several other departments in the county got their grants too, but I do not have the confirmation on it. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bell, I'll let you last because you always have to have one.
Yeah, but I'm still not, I'm still not making any meetings at my doctor's request, so I may go to wages Thursday.
So we're just glad to have you back. We really are. We did mention the trip that we made to Raleigh, visit with Representative Bell, Representative Johnson. I thought that was a very worthy trip, and I was impressed. And again, I'll say publicly that they're working hard to try to help Wayne County out. They understand where we are on our budget, and they prefer us not to raise taxes. We can't. So Representative Bell told me, I said, when are you going to get your budget passed? He says, I think it'll be done by June 15th. So, and I hope that's true. Then we'll have a clearer picture, perhaps, on what they may be able to bring to the table for Wayne County. I spent a lot of time at the hospital because, I'm on that board too. We spent a half a day yesterday arguing over the budget over there. So that's all I've done for the last few days is work on budgets. And we did open up the new surgical suites over there. Was it Wednesday, a week ago, or Thursday? I can't remember. Incredible. And of course, you don't want to go in there now because you would be going in as a patient, but we had opportunity to go and tour that stuff. But it is state of the art. Wayne County should be very proud of what they just built. And that's just the first part of it. But it's really, really impressive. Really impressive. But anyhow, that's all I've got, and I think we need to finish up some things in closed session for the same reasons. So is there a motion on the floor to go in closed session? Is that a motion on the floor? Raise your right hand. Thank you.